evening, everyone, and welcome to the February 2024 Ordinary Council meeting. We acknowledge and pay our respects to the traditional custodians of this land, the Whadjuk people of the Noongar Nation, and their elders past and present. As this is the first full meeting of Council for 2024, we'd like to welcome Mr. Matthew Maguire, who will be performing a Welcome to Country ceremony. Welcome, Mr. Maguire. The floor is yours.
Kaya wanjuna nana kayak nana kamaman beriawa jadi ni me milna nganya jurut ni jadi kolin wani jadi wanjuna nana kaya boja karan boja wa ngala boja ngala kamord ba boja nganya na jada wangi wa ni jadi bunaru. Good evening, ladies and gentlemen, distinguished guests, Mayor Milner. It's my honor to stand here on behalf of my mum and dad, my grandmothers and grandfathers, welcome you in the first language of the first people of this country to an area we call Gurrum, in a time of the year we call Bunuroo, which we can all attest to being the hottest time of the year. I ask my old people's spirits can be part of this evening with you this evening, that you have a wonderful time here this evening. But just as importantly, if not more so, you have safe journeys home to your own homes and families later on. Ngalaka mort pa nijeni ba kora. Ngalaka nijeni ba ye. Berduan. Ngalaka kulunga nijeni. Ngalaka kulunga. Ngalaka kulunga. Ngalaka mort pa nijeni ba berduan. Ja nijeni ba nijeni po puja. This is a land that our family have occupied for thousands of years. It is a land that we occupy today. It is a land that we will occupy for thousands of years to come. Our children and our children's children, your children and your children's children. Living together here as one on this beautiful land that God has blessed us with. Jalgaru, Canning River, Swan River, carrying our family's blood back into this country, this country, this land we call our mother, our provider. It is always an honour to come and be part of these, the first opening of the City of South Perth, and to come and be part of this opening with you and to share about not only to be here and the respect given by the City of South Perth and its people, but to come and share with you all and let you know that our culture still lives in this country, in and amongst our houses, our buildings, our roads, etc. So I thank you for having me here this evening. I'd like to leave you with a song. This song comes out of a place we call Karkara, which is Kings Park. And it sings about the yarlow, the spider and its web, and how we know it's all intricately connected. And if you touch one part of it, it has a reaction all the way around. And not only that, it's connected to country, which has that reaction into country. It's like us as people. We're all connected. In some way, shape or form, we're all connected. And I'm not just saying here. I'm saying throughout the whole world. Actions have reactions somewhere down along the chain, as a pebble in the water. Same sort of thing. So this song sings in celebration of the Yarlo and the web, and basically about us and all our connections. When we sing and dance in our country down here, our kailis are our instruments for our ceremonies and songs and dance. Wanare gamalana waningo wanare gamalana Wanarega malana, wanarega malana, ya boyangada, waningo, boyangada, waningo, wanarega malana, ya boyangada, waningo. So thank you, ladies and gentlemen. Thanks, Mayor Milner, City of South Perth, for the acknowledgement of the Aboriginal people, the Whadjuk people, the Gurrum people of this area that you all call home, that we all call home today. Have a wonderful night here again, like I said earlier, and have safe travels home to your own homes later on. In our language, we don't have a word for goodbye because we always look forward to seeing one another again. So what we like to say is, when we see one another again next time, we'll talk again then. So thank you. Have a wonderful and safe night tonight.
Thank you very much, Mr. Maguire, for that heartfelt and wonderful welcome to country. It's very much appreciated. So, I'd like to advise everyone that the audio of this meeting is being live streamed to YouTube. I request everyone to please turn off your mobile phones. I remind you that any recording of the meeting proceedings and photography within the chamber is prohibited unless prior approval has been granted, and councillors and city officers are reminded to disclose any declarations of financial interests and interests affecting impartiality, and are requested to activate their microphones when addressing the meeting. That brings us to item 1, which is the declaration of opening. I declare the meeting open at 6 minutes past 6 p.m. The first item here is attendance by electronic means. Councillor Glenn Cridland has requested to attend tonight's meeting via telephone, and so, in accordance with regulations 14C and 14C of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, I've authorised Councillor Cridland to attend the meeting by electronic means. Councillor Cridland, in accordance with Regulation 14C, Subregulation 5 of the Local Government Administration Regulations 1996, can you maintain confidentiality during the meeting and when the meeting goes behind closed doors?
Yes, I can, Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Cridland. That brings us to item 2, which is a disclaimer. The City of South Perth disclaims any liability for any loss arising from any person or body relying on any statement, discussion, recommendation or decision made during this meeting. Item 3 is announcements from the presiding member. That's me. There's no such announcements this evening. Item 4 is attendances. Item 4.1 is apologies. We have received an apology from Councillor Blake de Souza for this evening. And item 4.2 is approved leaves of absence. And Councillor Glenn Cridland does have an approved leave of absence for the period of 19 February through to the 1st of March 2024 inclusive, but of course he's attending remotely tonight. Item 5 is declarations of interest, and bear with me because we've got a few here. So, Mayor Greg Milner, that's me. I've declared an impartiality interest in item 10.1.1 as I'm a former co-patron of Wesley and South Perth Wasps Hockey Club. Councillor Hayley Prendeville has declared an impartiality interest in item 10.1.1 as myself and my family are members of Wasps Hockey Club. My involvement extends to numerous committee positions, one of those positions being president. I'm currently Minky coordinator. Councillor Mary Choi has declared an impartiality interest in item 10.1.1 as my husband has been a past member of the Wasps Hockey Club and a volunteer coach and is also a Wesley Old Boy. My sons have played for Wasps Hockey Club and they also attend Wesley College. Councillor Bronwyn Moore has declared an impartiality interest in item 10.1.1 as my son attends Wesley College. I've declared an impartiality interest in item 10.3.4 as my son has previously attended Conan Road Kindergarten. Councillor Glenn Cridland has declared an impartiality interest in item 12.5 as my son and daughter played hockey for Wasps when they were younger, and we walk our dog daily, often twice daily, at Collier Reserve, where Wasps have indicated an interest in relocating to, and constructing a hockey turf. Mayor Greg Milner, again, that's me. I've declared an impartiality interest in item 12.5 as I'm a former co-patron of Wesleyan South Perth Wasps Hockey Club. Councillor Hayley Prendeville has declared an impartiality interest in item 12.5 as myself and my family are members of Wasps Hockey Club. My involvement extends to numerous committee positions, one of those positions being president. I'm currently Minkie coordinator. Councillor Mary Choi has declared an impartiality interest in item 12.5 as my husband has been a past member of the Wasps Hockey Club and a volunteer coach and is also a Wesley College Old Boy. My sons have played for the Wasps Hockey Club and they also attend Wesley College. Councillor Bronwyn Moore has declared an impartiality interest in item 12.5 as my son attends Wesley College. And Councillor Glenn Cridland has declared an impartiality interest in item 12.5 as my son and daughter played hockey for Wasps when they were younger and we walk our dog daily, often twice daily, at Collier Reserve where Wasps have indicated an interest in relocating to and constructing a hockey turf. Councillors, does anyone else have any other interests that they wish to declare this evening? Councillor Choi.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Look, I don't have an interest, but I just wanted to confirm the procedure for remote attendance. I thought that was meant to be put to the council for approval, as happened in the past, or has that changed?
So I understand there's been a change in regulations. Ms Fry, can you confirm that? Yes, that's correct.
Okay, thank you for that clarification. And can I also confirm where Councillor Cridland is calling in from, interstate or overseas?
I don't think that's a requirement, Councillor Choi. Sorry, Councillor Cridland, I thought I heard you clear your throat there.
Correct. When you read out the disclosures of interests, you read out that I had made my disclosure twice in respect of 12.5. One of those was in respect of 10.1.
Yes, I can see that in the run sheet here. Yes, quite right. So Councillor Glenn Cridland has declared an impartiality interest in both item 10.1.1 and 12.5, and it's the same interest as I read previously. Thank you, Councillor Cridland. Councillors, any other interests that anyone wishes to declare this evening? No. Okay, thank you. In that case, we'll move on to item 6, which is public question time. Item 6.1 is responses to previous public questions taken on notice. There's nil this evening. And item 6.2 is public question time itself. But before I open public question time, I will let everyone know that we've actually got 19 sets of written questions this evening. That is going to take us quite a bit of time to get through, and we have a fairly busy agenda on top of that. So I'm going to ask if everyone could please help out. Please keep your preambles as minimalistic as you possibly can. And if you hear your question or one of your questions getting answered earlier in the meeting, please don't feel obliged to ask the same question again just because you've submitted it. If you've received the answer to your question, you're not obliged to ask all 3 questions if it's not necessary. So with that, I open public question time at 13 minutes past 6 p.m. I'd like to firstly invite Mr. Adam Nevin of Manning to the microphone. Welcome, Mr. Nevin. The microphone is yours, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you. The preamble is, following submission to this council body in April of 2021, a median island strip was constructed in December 2022 in the middle of Welwyn Avenue, Manning, at its junction with Downey Drive. This has created issues of frequent illegal and dangerous motorist behaviour for residents. And the following other questions. Question number 1, has any council member personally witnessed or viewed supplied footage of any illegal U-turns, 3-point turns, or driving the wrong way and driving directly over that median strip, behaviour of motorists at this junction?
Thank you. Ms. Ambrima?
Yeah, I have attended site and I have witnessed vehicles making a U-turn around that median island.
Question number 2. Given Welwyn Avenue, Manning is a local road, does this council accept and acknowledge that it is its responsibility to address these issues?
Thank you for the question. Ms. Ambrima?
Welwyn Avenue is managed by the city, who undertakes this responsibility in conjunction with other agencies. The raised island design of that intersection of Welwyn and Downey Drive was a response to above average crash rates at the intersection, and the treatment was approved by Main Roads WA.
Question number 3. What work has been and continues to be undertaken with Main Roads and any other relevant authorities towards a solution proposal for the impacted community input?
Thank you. Ms Amprima?
So following community feedback, the city engaged an independent consultant to conduct a road safety inspection at the intersection to assess the effectiveness of the modification. The inspection was conducted between the 2nd and 3rd of February 2024 to monitor road user behaviour and identify safety issues. Road safety inspection report raised a number of issues, including some missing tactile ground indicators at the curb ramp, unprotected bike lanes, and they did observe U-turn movements within the road carriageway. So the road safety auditor witnessed 2 vehicles undertaking U-turn movements to the south of Downey Drive using the carriageway of Welwyn Ave and completing U-turn manoeuvres. There's no crash history available to see if the U-turn movements are causing a crash or a safety issue, and the auditor's recommendation is to monitor the intersection for 12 months following its installation and then assess the situation after a 12-month period. Should there be a crash incident apparent, then we would look at extending the median island along Welwyn Ave towards the intersection of Manning, but that would be undertaken in consultation with the local community, because we are aware that extending that median island does have impacts for residents that are in that area.
Thank you, Ms Amprima, and thank you, Mr Niven, for your questions. I'd now like to invite Mr Max Smakura of Como, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
I've taken your points about preambles, so I'm not actually going to read mine out. I think the content will be obvious in the questions.
Thank you so much. I do appreciate it.
No problem. So my first question is directed to the CEO, Mr Bradford. Will the conditions to be met by WASPs to enable the granting of a lease over Collier Reserve include a security bond sufficient to satisfy the costs of future restoration of Collier Reserve back to its original state?
Thank you. Ms Shaw, you want to field that one?
Thank you, Mr Mayor, yes. As the proposal involves an exclusive use area, so that would be the synthetic hockey pitch and the shared use areas, which is the grass turf pitches, on Collier Reserve, 2 property agreements would be required, namely a lease agreement and a licence agreement. Relevant fees and charges, including any bonds where applicable, would be prescribed in the property agreements and would be the responsibility of the lessee and the licensee. Additionally, the property agreements would include a requirement for the lessee or the licensee to make good any damage to the area and reinstate the land to the original condition at the conclusion of the period.
Thank you. My second question is also to Mr Bradford. Will the city's risk management plan include clearly stated actions addressing, mitigating any financial risk associated with entering into a lease agreement with WASP and Wesley College over Collier Reserve?
Thank you. I might send that one to Director Shaw as well.
Thank you. If the proposal is approved, the property agreements would include various terms and conditions to mitigate the city's risk. So, for example, clauses are likely to be included to stipulate a range of annual obligations on the lessee and the licensee, insurance requirements, indemnity requirements, termination provisions, and in the event that default did occur, recovery of cost provisions.
Thank you. And my last question is to yourself, Mayor Milner. Does the Mayor consider the inconsistency whereby the minutes record a declaration of impartiality made by Councillor Wall that was not made during the meeting appropriate? And does this call into question the integrity of minutes of past and future council agenda briefings and meetings?
Thank you for the question. I will send that one to Director Adams.
So Councillor Waugh notified the Chief Executive Officer at 12:15 p.m. on Tuesday, the 20th of February, that she had an impartiality interest in both item 10.1.1 and 12.5, and it should have been included on the Mayor's run sheet for the agenda briefing. However, there was an administrative error and it was not included on the Mayor's run sheet. However, it had been disclosed.
Thank you, Mr Adams, and thank you, Mr Schmekura, for your questions.
Thank you.
I'd now like to invite Dr Louise Johnston of Como. Welcome. The microphone is yours, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you very much. The City of South Perth Strategic Community Plan 2021 to 2031 outlines 4 strategic directions, one of which pertains to the environment, built and natural, stating, and I quote, sustainable, livable, diverse and welcoming neighbourhoods that respect and value the natural and built environment. This document also identifies specific outcomes and strategies, for example, 3.3.3, improve the amenity value and sustainability uses of our streetscapes, public open spaces and foreshores. 3.3.4, provide proactive enhancement of the environment, maintaining open space and effective management of the Swan and Canning River foreshores. And 3.4.1, actively manage and promote sustainable water, waste, land and energy practices. So my question 1 is, am I correct to understand that public consultation was conducted as part of the making of this document?
Thank you for the question. Ms Shaw?
Thank you. Yes, a report on the city's draft strategic community plan was presented to council on the 26th of October 2021, with council subsequently resolving to approve the release of the draft plan for public feedback.
Thank you. Question 2, can the city please explain the significance of this document in relation to how the city administration operates and decisions that the council make?
Thank you. Ms Shaw?
Thank you. The strategic community plan enables the community's vision for the local government's future, including aspirations and service expectations. It is used to inform the corporate business plan, which details the services, operations and projects a local government will deliver within a defined period.
Question 3, between the considered solutions for the WASPs, namely utilising the Curtin High Performance Centre and establishing the club's own facilities at Collier Reserve, which option aligns with the previously mentioned strategic direction, outcomes and strategies?
Thank you. Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The specific provision within the strategic community plan is not as specific as relating to a direct proposal. So provision of sporting facilities for the local community aligns with strategy 1.2.1, which provides maintain current and plan, develop and facilitate community infrastructure to respond to community needs and priorities.
Thank you, Ms Shaw, and thank you, Dr Johnston, for the questions.
Thank you very much.
I'd now like to invite Mr Troy Marley of Como. Welcome. The microphone is yours, and we look forward to your questions.
My questions pertain to the statement made by Councillor Waugh in her notice of motion, where she states, the WASPs wish to have an opportunity to have their own home. This motion gives WASPs that opportunity. It is my understanding that the City and Council have already provided this opportunity by working with the club to investigate options over the past 10 years and by also funding half of the WASP hockey feasibility study by contributing $25,000. Question 1. If funding feasibility studies for sporting groups is a normal practice for the City, can the City give me an example of another time this was done with a similar funding amount?
Thank you for the question. Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Feasibility studies are an important phase undertaken during the sport and recreation facilities planning process, as it assists in making an informed decision about whether to proceed with a proposed project. The state government, through the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries, provides a feasibility study guide for sporting clubs on its website, including that the study should be comprehensive and objective. Council has not resolved to wholly or partly fund other feasibility studies in the past. However, Council's strategic community plan includes strategies to diversify and optimise non-rate revenue non-rate income and maintain a culture of fiscal efficiency. In this manner, the city will continue to seek external partnerships where shared and co-located facilities could be provided.
Thank you. Question 2. Can the city indicate the cost to the city in terms of staff time and resources expended over the past decade and what the projected costs would be to continue providing the club with this opportunity?
Thank you. Ms Shaw?
Thank you. So the city has not recorded the exact staff time over the past decade. The projected costs cannot be determined as it will be dependent on factors such as the time taken to liaise with the Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage when considering the future development application and matters related to the lease agreement itself. So given those factors are unknown at this point in time, we can't provide you an accurate estimate in that respect.
Thank you. Question 3. If this motion is approved, would it establish a precedent whereby council would need to allow other proponents, including developers, sporting bodies and private schools, to call dibs or stake a claim to a piece of public land through a two-year lease option, even if they haven't presented compelling evidence of its viability?
Thank you. Ms Shaw?
Yes, thank you. So it would not create a precedent on the basis that the city considers all proposals on a case-by-case basis. However, the city's preferred approach to access community need and to prioritise the use of public open space would usually involve an expression of interest process from all potential users, rather than provide one user the direct option to lease or licence an area.
Okay. Thank you, Ms Shaw, and thank you, Mr Marley, for the questions. I'd now like to invite Mr Murray Rosenberg of Como. If you'd like to come to the microphone, welcome, and we look forward to your questions.
Just a summary of the preamble. A couple of questions pertain to the statement by Councillor Waugh in her notice of motion, specifically in clause 49, where she states, quoting, "The internal mechanism for funding is not a matter that ought to be of relevance to the city. However, the club is not about to fold or become insolvent," end quote. My other question relates to the financial and viability and sustainability of Councillor Waugh's proposal. Question 1. Can the city clarify whether the internal mechanism of funding should be relevant to the city?
Thank you for the question. Mr Adams?
So yes, the city considers this as a relevant consideration, as the city is concerned about how this cost could be met and the ability for the proponents to meet the ongoing operating and capital replacement costs over the life cycle of facilities.
Question 2. Can the city confirm whether it has received the latest audited financial report of Wasp Hockey Club to verify Councillor Waugh's contention that the club is not about to fold or become insolvent?
Thank you. Mr Adams?
I'm not aware that we've received it, nor am I aware that we've actually asked for it.
Question 3. Considering all the financial information that the club has provided to date, which option is more financially viable and sustainable? Sharing the 4 turfs associated facilities at the proposed high-performance hockey centre at Curtin University, which is 2 kilometres of Collie Reserve, or the building of a clubhouse, synthetic turf and other infrastructure at Collie Reserve for the exclusive use of the Wasp Hockey Club?
Thank you, Mr Rosenberg. Mr Adams, can I send that your way?
So I think the city's position is outlined fairly clearly in the report at 10.1.1, in that the city recommends that council support the city working with WASPs and Hockey WA to determine how its needs can be best met at the High Performance Hockey Centre.
Thank you, Mr Adams, and thank you, Mr Rosenberg, for the questions. At this point, I'm going to use my powers under the standing orders to extend question time for a further 15 minutes. But if we need to extend it beyond the next 15 minutes, I will need to put that motion to council. So with that, I'd like to invite Mr Oliver Crosthwaite of South Perth, invite you to the microphone. Welcome. We look forward to your questions, but I do see you've got a pretty lengthy preamble here. If you could cut that down, I just have to be fair to everyone.
Thank you, Mayor. Councillors, with respect to motion 12.5, how can the council consider rushing headlong into signing a lease agreement, even with a 2-year settlement period, to hand over Collier Reserve to the to the Wasp Hockey Club and effectively to an exclusive private school, Wesley College? 1, where the hockey club already has a 21-year lease on the Richardson Park. 2, where Wesley College is currently attempting to take over a large tract of foreshore at the eastern end of Sir James Mitchell Park, which incidentally is owned freehold by the city, for its own exclusive sporting activities. 3, where the college currently has a lease on Collins Park, which sits alongside Collier Reserve, which will conveniently...
Sorry, Mr Crosthwaite, I do have to be consistent here. Yep. Could you move to the first question, please?
Question is, why is the council considering rushing headlong into signing a lease agreement, even with a 2-year settlement period?
Thank you. Mr Adams?
So as outlined in the conclusion to item 10.1.1 on the agenda, the city recommends that council support the city working with WASPs and Hockey WA to determine how its needs can be best met at the High Performance Hockey Centre. Notwithstanding this, it's open for council to resolve to proceed with the recommendation outlined in Councillor Waugh's motion at item 12.5 on the agenda.
Thank you, Mr Adams, and thank you, Mr Crosthwaite, for the question. I'd now like to invite Mr Brian Plester of Como, if you'd like to come. Mr Crosthwaite.
Are you saying, Mayor, with respect, that I can't finish? I've only got one question.
It's a forum for questions, Mr Crosthwaite. It's not a forum for deputations or debate. I'm sorry, those are the rules. We did have deputations last week.
The preamble regarding Wesley College and its...
Preambles are to be short and succinct. I appreciate that you've got a view on this matter and, well, I very much thank you for asking the question.
To put
no,
it to
I'm afraid not. No.
Thank you, Mayor.
The opportunity for that was last week, but thank you for the question.
Thank you.
So, Mr Brian Plester of Como, I invite you to the microphone. Welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors, city officers. At the 27 June 23 Ordinary Council meeting, Council resolved not to progress with the hockey proposal at Collier Reserve Como due to deficiencies in the feasibility study. My questions pertain to the financial information provided in the study, where it states that the club seeks a commitment from the city to fund capital works. However, the city has indicated no funds are currently set aside in the city's 10-year financial plan for hockey facilities or the above works, and the city has a number of other capital work priorities that would potentially compete for funds against these works. Question 1. Based on the discussion from last week's agenda briefing meeting, it's understood that these capital works could be substantial and could amount to millions. Can the city clarify which other capital works priorities these works could potentially compete against?
Thank you. Mr Adams?
City officers and council work together to determine capital works programs when considering adopting the annual budget. Capital works items relate to all of our assets, such as roads, drainage, technology, buildings and the like. We'll commence our budget workshops in preparation of the 24-25 budget in the near future. And so we haven't actually determined what the capital works priorities are in the next budget yet. That's something that we work with council on prior to adopting the budget.
Thank you. Question 2. Has the city revised its 10-year plan to allocate funds specifically for covering the capital works costs associated with the hockey facilities?
Thank you. Mr Adams?
No.
Thank you. Question 3. In reviewing Councillor Waugh's motion and agenda report, I can't find any new information, such as a recent business case, to suggest that the facilities are now financially viable. So why is the council even considering granting the club the option to lease a portion of Collier Reserve?
Thank you. Mr Adams?
So council is required to consider the notice of motion and can resolve to proceed with the notice of motion recommendation or not. Other than the need to comply with Standing Orders Local Law 2007, elected members can submit a notice of motion regardless of whether new information is available on a matter previously considered by council or not.
Okay.
Thank you, Mr Adams, and thank you, Mr Plister, for the questions. I'd now like to invite Ms Jane Morrissey of Como. Welcome to you. The microphone is yours, and we look forward to your questions.
Okay, mine's regarding traffic. If WASP is relocated, they have 800 plus members, and then there's also the Aquinas Amateur Football Club, and also they use Bill Graydon Oval. It'd total at least 1,000 members that would be travelling in Thelma Street, Murray Street and Ryrie Avenue at all different times, especially throughout the winter. It's very hard to cross the roads as it is with all the sports going on. My first question, could the city please provide the most up-to-date figures regarding the number of vehicles passing through Thelma Street, Ryrie Avenue and Murray Street?
Thank you for the question. Ms Amprima?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the most recent data we have available is from 2022 for Ryrie Ave and Murray Street, with the average weekday traffic, daily traffic for Ryrie Ave being 5,435 vehicles per day, and for Murray Street the figure is 3,829. We don't actually have any current data for Thelma Street.
Thank you. In August 2022, a group of residents met with the city officers, Chris Jansen and Rodney McCodis, at the Operations Centre to request the installation of additional traffic calming measures in the area, specifically an electronic sign with a smiley face to remind cars to slow down on Thelma Street, just off Haymond Road. It has been well over a year since that meeting. Why hasn't this been installed?
Thank you. Ms Amprima?
And thank you, Mr Mayor. Thanks for raising this with the city. The two employees that you reference are no longer working here, and the current staff are not aware of this request. However, now you've raised it with us again, we will make arrangements for that to be put in place.
Much appreciated, thank you. During that meeting, we couldn't identify any other feasible traffic calming measures. I would like to know how the city intends to manage traffic in the area if the proposal is approved for all the sporting clubs.
Thank you. Ms Amprima?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. We don't consider it necessary for the current situation to make any changes to the road network, but in the context of the proposal, prior to going ahead, there would need to be a requirement for a full traffic impact assessment, and that assessment would need to identify the impacts of the proposed development on the roads in the vicinity and any mitigation measures required to address the negative impacts, and it may even raise concerns that lead us to the city to object to the proposal on the grounds of increased traffic.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Amprima, and thank you, Ms Morrissey, for the questions. I'd now like to invite Mr Jeremy Lowe of Como. Welcome to the microphone. We look forward to your questions.
Thank you. According to the officer's comment in the report for the agenda item 12.5, for WASP to lease and build their facilities at Collier Reserve, they would need to submit a development application. This application would undergo review by the West Australian Planning Commission. As part of this process, they would need to demonstrate community and local government support for their proposal. As the city would recall, a petition with 480 signatures opposing this proposed development was submitted to Council on December 14, 2021. Question 1. Councillor Waugh's notice of motion referred to a hockey feasibility study which reported 558 respondents in support of the proposed development. Attempts to participate in this survey required a positive response to WASP membership. If a response was no, the survey closed. Could the city please clarify whether the community engagement was conducted by the city or the proponent, WASP?
Thank you for the question. Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the community survey for the Collier Reserve Hockey Facilities feasibility study was undertaken by a consultant on behalf of WASP and Wesley College, not the city.
Right. Can the city please explain how many of these respondents are residents and ratepayers of the City of Perth, South Perth?
Thank you. Ms Shaw?
Thank you. The appendix to the feasibility study presented to Council at the 27th of June 2023 Ordinary Council meeting contained the submissions received. However, it does not include the names and addresses of respondents, and as such, the City cannot advise how many respondents were ratepayers within the City of South Perth.
Clearly. Given that only electors of the district may sign a petition, it could be argued that the community's petition more accurately reflects a lack of support for this proposal. Why didn't the city acknowledge or include the findings of this petition in their report?
Thank you. Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The City has provided its response to the details contained in the notice of motion at item 12.5 only. The City has not undertaken any further community consultation or provided details of prior consultation, as this was not a matter addressed by the notice of motion and had previously been provided to Council when considering the feasibility study at the 27th of June meeting.
Thank you, Ms Shaw, and thank you, Mr Lowe, for your questions. I'd now like to invite Ms Christy Lowe of Como. If you'd like to come to the microphone, welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
Okay. The city has acknowledged the constraints it faces in creating new, active, open spaces in our district, and its shortage is expected to worsen due to infill. As an established district, there are limited opportunities for the city to create new public open space and very expensive to buy new land for this purpose. They've highlighted the need to optimise existing sports spaces through the co-location and sharing of facilities. This viewpoint is supported by the Mayor, who said that we need to, quote, make better use of the public facilities in our district to meet the growing demand for sporting spaces from our community. So, during a recent PNC meeting at Como Secondary College, the principal expressed the school's vision to incorporate a synthetic hockey turf facility on their school grounds as part of a much-needed upgrade and refurbishment. So, my first question. The principal of Como has expressed a desire to include a turf as part of their upgrade. If WASPs shared a turf with Como Secondary, what kind of benefits would the club and this public school have to gain from this partnership?
Thank you for the question. Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. There are a range of benefits associated with co-located and shared use sporting facilities, including minimising the duplication of facilities and resources, maximising opportunities for cost-efficient sharing, including management, maintenance, staffing and energy costs, maximising external funding opportunities, and the shared costs of management and future asset management between the users.
Excellent. Okay, the approval of the proposal would result in Wesley College, a private institution, gaining commercial benefits from a public area. Could the city please provide information on the current market value of the land intended for lease? Or in other words, what would be the cost for either the city or Wesley College to acquire similar land for conversion into a public open space or sports facility?
Thank you. Ms Shaw?
Thank you. The City has not undertaken evaluation for this land. The City provides for the use of public open space for a range of users, including individuals, not-for-profit sporting clubs and associations, private schools and commercial organisations. The use can either be facilitated through shorter-term arrangements, such as fee-for-hire, one-off bookings or sports season bookings, or longer-term arrangements, such as the licence and lease agreements.
Okay. Considering the turf options available to WASPs at the High Performance Centre in Curtin, how does fencing off part of Collier Reserve to convert it from a multi-purpose sports space to a single-use facility align with the goal of making better use of public facilities?
Thank you for the question. Ms Shaw?
Thank you. So as outlined in the conclusion to item 10.1.1 on the agenda, the City recommends that Council support the City working with WASP and Hockey WA to determine how its needs can best be met at the High Performance Hockey Centre.
Yeah, thank you.
Thank you for your questions. Okay, councillors, we've just hit the second tranche of 15 minutes for public question time, so I am going to move a motion that public question time be extended for a further 15 minutes. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Brenda Abrandis, thank you. Councillors, please cast your votes. We might do it, I was going to say by a show of hands, but we've got our electronics going. Councillor Cridland, how would you like to vote on that?
I'm a yes.
Thank you. That was, I think I'm waiting on one more. That was unanimous, yes, thank you. All right, so we've got another 15 minutes for question time. I'd now like to invite Mr. Barry Drake of South Perth, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
My name's Barry Drake. I live at Unit 3, number 2, Scenic Crescent, South Perth. Good evening, Mr. Mayor, councillors, officers, members of the gallery, a lot here tonight, never seen it like this before, and all of you listening on YouTube, good evening. My questions represent a change of subject tonight. They relate to the way the City of South Perth Council has charged some.
Perhaps we can just move on to the questions, Mr. Drake.
A lot of the other preambles went longer than that, Mr. Mayor. Anyway, I'll get on to question number 1. Why is the City of South Perth Council trying to stop me from making a complaint to the Ombudsman about the way the City has charged some of the landowners the network fee for undergrounding the power lines in the Hurlingham South Perth project area?
Thank you for the question. Mr. Adams.
So, Mr. Drake, I can assure you that neither I or the City have the power or the intent to stop you making a complaint to the Ombudsman. In fact, my view would be quite the opposite, in that I would encourage you to make a formal complaint so that it can be referred to the City for a formal response. As previously advised on more than one occasion, the City does not have any record of ever having been contacted by the Ombudsman regarding this matter.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Your second question, please, Mr. Drake.
The Ombudsman have that record. I'd just like to...
Mr. Drake, I'm going to remind you,
Number
it's not a forum for debate. Second question, please.
I'd just like to correct something, but question number 2. You have advised me to again take this matter to the SAT, the State Administrative Tribunal. If I do that and represent myself without a lawyer, will the City also attend without their lawyers?
Thank you for the question. Mr. Adams.
So again, Mr. Drake, SAT is the appropriate jurisdiction to deal with the matter. Officers of the City are obliged to act in the best interests of the City and its residents as a whole. If it's in the best interests of the City to attend with a lawyer, then that's what we'll do.
Thank you, Mr. Adams. Your third question, Mr. Drake.
Well, I take that as a no.
Again, Mr. Drake, your third question, please.
Question number 3. If the answer to question 2 is no, and I represent myself, with the City, will the City give me an undertaking not to seek any costs, legal or otherwise, if they employ their lawyers to represent them at the State Administrative Tribunal, win or lose?
Thank you for the question. Mr. Adams?
No, it will not. We have to act in the best interest of the City and its ratepayers.
Thank you, Mr. Adams, and thank you, Mr. Drake, for your questions. I'd now like to invite Ms. Kay Poe of Como, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
Good evening, everyone. In her notice of motion, clause 55, Councillor Waugh indicated that the Community Recreation Facilities Plan contained a key recommendation, quoted as that the city work with Wesley South Perth Hockey Club, Wesley College and Hockey WA, among other stakeholders, for the relocation of the WASP to Collier Reserve, incorporating a synthetic hockey turf, grass hockey field, and club rooms. She then, in clause 56, contends that since the council adopted this plan on June 25, 2019, they had, in effect, I quote, drawn a line in the sand. My first question is, does the city agree with Councillor Waugh's statement?
Thank you for the question. Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the city's role is to provide technical advice for elected members to consider during the decision-making process. The city's role does not extend to having an opinion about whether the administration agrees or disagrees with statements made by elected members.
Thank you. Can the city explain what a key recommendation is and whether it is binding?
Thank you. Ms Shaw.
Thank you. So key recommendation is the same as a recommendation. The intent of this recommendation in particular, contained within the Community Recreation Facilities Plan, was to work with the proponents and other stakeholders, which included Hockey WA and the Department of Local Government, Sport and Cultural Industries, to assess the feasibility of relocating the WASP to Collier Reserve. Following this process, the city had determined that the proposal was not feasible. Therefore, the city is now recommending that it work with WASP and Hockey WA to determine how its needs can best be met at the High Performance Hockey Centre.
Thank you. Can the city please advise whether this Community Recreation Facilities Plan went out to public consultation?
Thank you. Ms Shaw.
Thank you. So consultation during the development of the plan occurred in the following manner. Local sporting community groups that lease a city community recreation facility, relevant state sporting associations, relevant city departments involved in community recreation facilities, and elected members via elected member workshops held on the 8th of April 2019. So feedback was provided during the consultation sessions. All of that feedback was incorporated into the draft plan prior to its adoption by Council on the 23rd of July 2019. So although the draft plan was not specifically advertised to the general public during its development, the plan was made publicly available on the city's website and included within the ordinary council meeting agendas on both the 25th of June 2019 and again on the 23rd of July 2019. This enabled members of the public to ask any questions or make a deputation about the draft plan at that point in time.
Okay, thank you.
Thank you, Ms Shaw, and thank you, Ms Poe, for the questions. I'd now like to invite Ms Cecilia Brooke of South Perth. Welcome to you. The microphone is yours, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, councillors and all city officers. I speak on behalf of the City of South Perth Residents Association. Preamble. The 2021 census tells us that within a 2-kilometre radius of Collier Reserve, the population was 8,618 people, made up of 2,198 families. This number has since risen with urban infill, while the area of open space will of course remain static. CROSPER is concerned that if the WASPs are given the space at Collier Reserve, this will adversely impact current and future users. This is a rare open public space within our city and should be preserved as such. Question 1. With that in mind, do city officers share our concerns that should this motion be supported by council, it would set a precedence for other parks within the City of South Perth, whereby what is currently a public community amenity open space may no longer be available to the general users for the community's engagement?
Thank you for the question. Mr Adams.
I don't think we'd say that we have a concern that it would set a precedent for other parks or open spaces, because the city would consider each proposal on a case-by-case basis.
Thank you. Question 2, preamble. City officers in their reports have provided compelling reasons why they are not recommending the WASP proposal. Given that this background, how can city officers also state in the current report that as an option, council could consider supporting commencement of the paperwork for the development of the option to lease that has been proposed by Councillor Waugh concurrently with the ongoing discussions between Hockey WA and WASP? Should the outcome of these discussions prove unsatisfactory to WASP requirements, the inference is that council could reconsider the proposal yet again with the documentation in place. Either it is supported or it's not. Such a question to elected members is just to provide a means to keep kicking the matter further down the road.
Thank you. Mr Adams.
So, as outlined in the conclusion to item 10.1.1 on the agenda, the City recommends that Council support the City working with WASP and Hockey WA to determine how its needs can be best met at the High Performance Hockey Centre. Notwithstanding, should Council adopt Councillor Waugh's recommendation, the City would be required to implement this decision and as such has provided advice in the report to this effect. Regardless, the final lease option and lease will need a further decision of Council as well as consent from the Minister for Lands.
Thank you. Question 3, in their recommendation on item on 10.1.1, City officers state, while as Richardson Park has previously been deemed unsuitable for a synthetic hockey facility, there may be an opportunity to provide a synthetic turf adjacent to the Kwinana Freeway. Is this not an opportunity that should be explored before dismissing the officer recommendation and moving on to considering Councillor Waugh's motion?
Thank you for the question. Mr Adams.
So this option was discussed with WASP, who have reiterated that Collier Reserve Collins Oval is the best solution for a holistic WASP facility.
Thank you, Mr Adams, and thank you, Ms Brooke, for the questions. I'd now like to invite Ms Heidi Schmidt of South Perth, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
Good evening, Mr Mayor, councillors and city staff. Here we are again. My first question is with regard to the WASP motion, and I speak on behalf of South Perth Tree Canopy advocates for this question. Numerous mature trees would have to be removed for the additional WASP car parking at ratepayers' expense. Should this proposal be approved tonight, it's estimated that around 120 to 150 parking bays will be required for the players, supporters and others. Not only is this an unfair cost to all ratepayers in the city for only 380 WASP residents, not club members, but residents, but it also requires removal of up to 90 mature trees that take around 20 years to establish, including those linked to the facility itself at a replacement cost attributed to Councillor Waugh's helpful proposal, which we do appreciate, of 2 trees for every one removed, which is 180 trees, minimum. That is, based on the city's own information, an additional cost to the city's ratepayers of around 133.
Could you please proceed to the question? That's quite a preamble and this is not a forum for making statements. It's a forum for asking questions.
I'll just do the last bit and then I'll go there.
No, please proceed to the question.
$133,000 to $150,000.
Ms Schmidt, please proceed to your question. I don't want to turn off your microphone, but I will.
The question is, Councillor Waugh's motion would have the city seek a lease agreement with WASP. Has the city factored in these very real additional costs related to the car park and replacement of a significant number of tree assets, and therefore why is the city considering a lease agreement with WASP at this stage as per this motion when more and more previously unknown costs not included in WASP's feasibility study are still being discovered?
Thank you for the question. Ms Shaw?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So should Council adopt Councillor Waugh's notice of motion, Part D1 and D3 requires WASP obtaining development approval to construct the club facilities, building and hockey field within the leased premises and submission of a tree management plan. The development application would need to be supported by a range of technical reports, which may include a traffic impact assessment and parking management plan. The City will be able to determine the required traffic and car parking modifications through assessment of the detailed design, as well as the amenity evaluation of the trees, at which point in time it could determine more detailed cost estimates in this respect.
Thank you. Now, my second question, I am not speaking on behalf of the tree canopy advocates. This is a personal question, and the preamble is very long, so I'm going to shorten it into a précis.
Thank you.
So basically, there's an article that was put out in the first issue of My South Perth magazine, which states, pine and macadamia provide very fat-rich foods, and that can lead to the birds becoming too heavy to take off the ground quickly, contributing to frequent bird injuries or fatalities from predictor, I think it was meant to be predator, attacks and collisions with cars. Now, this is plainly not true.
Time for the question, Ms Schmidt, please.
Based on the experts' opinions at Murdoch Uni, who are the experts in these birds, this is not true. I haven't had a response saying that that would be retracted. I asked verbal questions of
Ms
city
Schmidt,
officers and
please,
they
no
said
more
it would
background.
not.
This is not a deputation. It's not a time to be making statements. I
Okay,
can see
to
your
the
question
question.
here. Please ask your question.
To the question. When and how is the city going to retract and correct the misinformation about the black cockatoos and their primary food source, Pinus pinaster?
Thank you for the question. Ms Amprema or Mr Adams? Mr Adams.
So whilst we're happy for you to have and share your opinion, the city will not print a retraction or correction with regard to the Cockatoos of Collier Park Golf Course article printed in December 2023 edition of My South Perth magazine. The article does not contain misinformation. However, the city understands that greater clarity could have been included regarding the city's revegetation strategy, including the reasons for replacing dying pine trees at Collier Park Golf Course, which was created in consultation with experts on Black Carnaby's cockatoos.
Thank you, Mr Adams, and thank you, Ms Schmidt, for your questions. At this stage, I realise we've exceeded the current tranche of 15 minutes, so I am going to move another motion that we extend public question time for a further 15-minute period. Thank you for seconding that, Councillor Brenda Abrandis. Councillors, please cast your votes on another motion that we extend public question time for another 15 minutes. Councillor Credland?
Yes.
Thank you. All right, that was unanimous, and we have a further 15 minutes for public question time. I'd now like to invite Ms Bronwyn David of South Perth. If you'd like to come to the microphone, welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mayor. Good evening, Mayor. Good evening, councillors, and good evening, city staff. Thank you for this opportunity. I'll try and be quick. This is in regard to item 12.5 on the agenda and the building of a dedicated hockey field at Collier Reserve. The motion proposes that the hockey club's option to lease be subject to the condition, amongst others, of the club preparing and submitting a tree management plan, which endeavours to retain as many existing trees on the reserve as possible, which is terrific, and provides for the planting of replacement trees on the reserve to replace those removed during construction. My first question is, according to city information, getting a single tree in the ground and ensuring it survives for 2 years costs almost $1,000. Can the city confirm that the words provides for the planting of replacement trees puts the obligation on the hockey club to pay for the planting and ongoing maintenance of these replacement trees, or will this cost fall to the city?
Thank you for the question. Ms Amprema?
So part D3 of Councillor Ward's notice of motion requires WASPs to prepare and submit to the city and the city approving a tree management plan for the development footprint, which endeavours to retain as many existing trees on the reserve as possible and provides for planting of replacement trees on the reserve to replace those removed during construction. The cost of replacement plantings would typically be a requirement of the applicant, and the city would recommend a condition be imposed on the development approval by the West Australian Planning Commission to this effect.
Thank you very much. Given that it is mature trees that will be lost in this scenario, and it's well established that a one-for-one replacement planting is sufficient given all of the benefits that a mature tree provides, does the city have a position or policy on tree replacement numbers on this site? For example, 2 replacement trees for each one lost.
Thank you. Ms Amprima?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. No, the city does not have a policy for placement trees associated with the development applications.
Thank you. And my final question, most of us in this room won't have time to see a tree planted now reach its maturity. Whether or not there is an uptick in the number of trees to be replaced, and it sounds like there isn't, is the city willing to insist on minimum sizes of replacement trees, i.e. not tube stock, to ensure that we get replacement canopy faster?
Thank you. Ms Amprima?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The value of any replacement trees planted would need to be conditioned on any development approval. Given the West Australian Planning Commission would determine the development application, the city cannot advise whether any recommendation made by the city to require a certain litre of tree would be included in any condition imposed.
Thank you very much.
Thank you, Ms Amprima, and thank you, Ms David, for the questions. I'd now like to invite Mr Fons Burkhout of South Perth. Welcome to you. The microphone is yours, and we look forward to your questions.
Thank you, Mayor. We're now all pretty well aware that Wesley South Perth Hockey Club, has not fully engaged with Hockey WA in transparent manner, and as reported by the CEO last week, refused to meet together with Hockey WA and the city. Additionally, it seems 2 alternative options now exist to accommodate WASP's need: the High Performance Hockey Centre at Curtin University and Como Secondary College, both offering potential benefits. In light of these circumstances, I'd like to raise the following. Does Council believe it prudent for the city to proceed with the paperwork necessary for the option to lease agreement, potentially handing over Collier Reserve to the Hockey Club and Wesley College, before all available options have been thoroughly explored? These options include those within the city and nearby grounds managed by Hockey WA.
Thank you for the question. Mr Adams?
I think the city's made its position clear with the recommendation on item 10.1.1. The city can't respond on behalf of council. Council will consider this matter when considering Councillor Waugh's notice of motion.
Thank you. Does Council acknowledge the importance of requiring evidence from both the Hockey Club and Wesley College, demonstrating genuine and constructive consultations with Como Secondary College regarding shared facilities before considering exclusive use of public open space?
Thank you. Mr Adams?
Again, this is a matter for Council to consider when considering the decision on Councillor Waugh's notice of motion.
Thank you. And can Council guarantee transparent engagement from the WASP Hockey Club with all parties involved in alternative options before committing further time and resources from the city?
Thank you. Mr Adams?
It will be up to WASPs as to how they choose to engage with the city and other stakeholders.
Thank you, Mr Adams, and thank you, Mr Burkhout, for your questions. I'd now like to invite Ms Joanne Ord of Como. If you'd like to come to the microphone, welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
Hi everybody. I was reading them really quickly until I left my glasses at work, so just bear with me. So these, of course, relate to the proposed hockey facility. Last week I listened to all the deputations, and particularly those in support of the notice of motion, and they were largely emotive, focused on history, and featured a Wesley sales pitch. Not one of those deputations nor the notice of motion mention any concern for the potential reduction to public open space, something intended for the entire community's enjoyment and use. The city already has a shortfall of metres squared per resident of active public open space. The city is a brownfields community. There is no more land to be had for such purpose. The days of leasing parcels of land for sole source activities are gone. Density increases are here to stay. Strategic and community plans can and should be updated accordingly. How will the city ensure that our existing levels of public open space are protected and preserved for the enjoyment of every South Perth resident, both current and future?
Thank you for the question. Mr Adams.
So the city's in the process of preparing a public open space strategy to provide robust guidance in respect to opportunities for sports spaces, the preservation of landscape features, natural environments and cultural assets. This will assist in future decision making in respect to matters pertaining to public open space. The city is also reviewing its community recreation facilities plan to in part consider whether there are opportunities for co-location of existing users as it relates to the use of open space.
Thank you. Question 2. The Mayor resigned as co-patron of WASP mid-last year, and their newsletter states that he can be free to support the club's turf development proposal in future. Councillor Prendeville is the former WASP president, although I may stand corrected, you may still be current, according to what I heard earlier, and retains numerous positions on their committee. Councillors Waugh and Coveney both campaigned on this issue, and there is some community concern that a stacking of council was orchestrated to breathe life back into this issue to reach WASP's desired outcome. How does the city ensure that elected members behave and vote with true impartiality, devoid of self-interest, political agenda, and at all times consider issues on their own merits?
Thank you for the question. Mr Adams.
So elected members are required to declare if they have an impartiality interest in a matter. And once declared, they may remain in the meeting and vote on the item. This is in line with guidance from the Department of Local Government. You can look at the guidelines on their website. Failure to declare an impartiality interest is a breach of a rule of conduct and may be subject to sanction by the Local Government Standards Panel. It's the responsibility of individual elected members to make a declaration and to vote on issues based on the information put before them.
And your third question, Ms Ord?
It is not lost on community members that Councillor Waugh's notice of motion could set in motion a train that is difficult to stop, despite assurances from the city. We know in practice issues become overly emotive or election-based and keep raising their heads via new motions. This motion has been worded carefully to soften the immediate costs incurred by the city and by default the ratepayer, and utilises non-binding phrases such as to the satisfaction of. The lawyers here will know that legal services are not cheap and such phrases are pretty meaningless in application. Given the previous council agreed with the city's recommendation in June 2023 not to proceed, can the city advise if it believes that proposing and supporting this new motion is in fact good governance that benefits the broader community?
Thank you for the question. Mr Adams.
So I can assure you that all relevant governance procedures have been followed in this motion being put forward. The city is required to implement resolutions of council. As outlined in the conclusion to item 10.1.1 on the agenda, the city recommends that council support the city working with WASP and Hockey WA to determine how its needs can best be met at the High Performance Hockey Centre.
Thank you, Mr Adams, and thank you, Ms Ord, for the questions. I'd now like to invite Ms Selena Hughes of Como, if you'd like to come to the microphone. Welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
With respect to motion 12.5, why would the council want to direct the city to sign a lease agreement handing Collier Reserve to the WASP Hockey Club and Wesley College before it has determined exactly how many trees will be lost or potentially placed at risk, example, root damage and or undermined, established how many trees would be required as replacements, given the city policy of 7 to every 1 tree lost, and calculated this cost to the city and its community.
Thank you for the question. Ms Amprema?
Yeah, the city is unable to answer a question on behalf of council. That would need to be a question for the councillors.
Okay. I also wanted to ask, how will the city ensure that no damage to existing trees that will be near the construction of such a facility be?
Thank you.
Yep.
Ms Amprema?
Yes, so the proposal would need to identify any trees that are requiring removing as part of the development and the offset to compensate for the loss of those trees. For trees being retained but at risk of damage, details of the tree protection are required as part of the development and ordinarily would include an area of protection for the tree and the root system. This would be in the form of a physical barrier.
Okay. And what remediation will be done and who will bear the cost?
Thank you. Ms Amprema?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. The proposal doesn't include that level of detail, and the city does not currently have any provisions in its forward works or budget or planning relating to this.
I see. Okay.
Thank you, Ms Amprema, and thank you, Ms Hughes, for the questions. I'd now like to invite Professor Priya-Smak-Solly of Como. I hope I've pronounced the name there correctly. Welcome to you, and we look forward to your questions.
All right. My contribution is all about the sewer. By way of preamble, upon asking, city officers from the City Operations Centre have informed local community members in the area that there is a main sewer line and possibly other major services running under the proposed location of the exclusive use synthetic turf facility. As a result, the turf cannot be constructed abutting the fence line to the city depot and nursery as it is proposed. We have also been informed that shifting this infrastructure is not an option, and therefore the proposed facility would need to be moved at least 20 metres further into Collier Reserve to avoid the sewer, and further impacting and absorbing public open space from all other users. Question 1. Is the city aware of the main sewer location under Collier Reserve, and if it does in fact run under the location of the proposed WASP hockey facility?
Thank you for the question. Ms Amprema?
Yeah, so there is a sewer main in the vicinity of Collier Reserve, which is owned by the Water Corporation. Any development undertaken by WASPs would require them to determine the exact location of this asset and gain any required approvals from Water Corporation for works that may impact it. The city's not undertaken a specific services location in relation to the proposed development.
Thank you. Question 2, if there is in fact a main sewer underneath the site, this would be a major discrepancy in the feasibility study and raises concerns that other major design considerations may have also been missed. Is the city expecting another detailed feasibility report to be provided by WASP before granting the deed?
Thank you. Ms Amprema?
The notice of motion as it stands doesn't provide for that.
Thank you.
Just before you proceed with your third question there, Professor Sully, we have exceeded our 15-minute tranche. I am going to move another motion that we extend public question time for a further 15 minutes. Thank you for seconding that, Councillor Choi. Councillors, please cast your votes. Councillor Cridland, how would you like to vote?
Yes.
Thank you. That was unanimous, so we have a further 15 minutes for public question time. I'm sorry for the interruption, Professor Sully. Please ask a third question.
Not at all. Question 3. Why is the council even considering asking the city to prepare a deed granting a 2-year call option to lease a portion of Collier Reserve for a 21-year period before determining the necessity and cost of relocating the underground infrastructure mentioned earlier?
Thank you. Ms Amprema?
The city cannot respond on behalf of council. However, there will be a number of conditions that will need to be met before the option can be exercised.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Amprema, and thank you, Professor Sully, for the questions. I'm now going to check with governance to see if there's any late questions in the tray. No, there's not. Okay. In that case, I close public question time at 7:19 p.m. That brings us to item 7 of the agenda, which is confirmation of minutes and notes. Item 7.1 is minutes. Item 7.1.1 is the ordinary council meeting held on 12 December 2023. So I'm about to call for a mover and a seconder that the minutes of the ordinary council meeting held 12 December 2023 be taken as read and confirmed as a true and correct record. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Brenda Abrandis, thank you. Someone to second? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Councillors, does anyone oppose the minutes being taken as read and confirmed as true and correct? No. Councillor Cridland?
I don't oppose.
All right. On that case, I'll use my powers under the standing orders to declare that carried unanimously. Thank you all. Item 7.2 is notes of briefing. And I'm about to call for a mover and a seconder to move that council notes that the following council briefings and workshops were held. 7.2.1, concept briefings and workshops. 7.2.2, council agenda briefing, 20 February 2024. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Someone to second? Councillor Prendeville, thank you. Councillors, does anyone oppose? Councillor Choi.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I don't want to oppose. I just want to let the administration know that I did attend an individual briefing for the local planning policies in LPS7 with Director Shaw on the 23rd of February 2024, and I believe that is now being recorded in the minutes as per the December minutes. Thank you.
Are we able to record that, Governance? Thank you, and I think I fall into the same category as well. Yes, thanks. Okay, thank you for that, Councillor Choi. Does anyone oppose the motion before us? Councillor Cridland?
I don't oppose.
Thank you. Okay, since no one opposes, I'll use my powers once again under the standing orders to declare that carried unanimously. Thank you all. That brings us to item 8, which is presentations. Item 8.1 is petitions, of which there's nil this evening. Item 8.2 is gifts or awards presented to council, nil this evening. And item 8.3 is deputations, and deputations were heard at the council agenda briefing held on 20 February 2024. That brings us to item 9, which is the method of dealing with agenda business. I'll now seek confirmation from the Chief Executive Officer, Mr Mike Bradford, that all of the report items contained in tonight's agenda were discussed at the February council agenda briefing. Mr Bradford.
That is correct, Mr Mayor.
Thank you, Mr Bradford. So with the exception of those items that are withdrawn for discussion tonight, reports will be adopted by exception resolution. And by that, I mean that the officer recommendation will be adopted as is, without discussion or amendment. The following items have been withdrawn this evening. Item 10.4.5, which is entitled Budget Review for the period ended 31 January 2024. The reason for that is an absolute majority is required. Councillors, item 10.1.1, co-located hockey facilities within the City of South Perth, was the subject of several deputations last week. Does anyone wish to withdraw this or any other item for discussion this evening? Councillor Choi.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I would like to withdraw item 10.1.1 for discussion. Thank you.
All right, item 10.1.1 is being withdrawn for discussion. Is there any other items that anyone wishes to withdraw for discussion this evening? Councillor Cridland?
None by me.
Right. In that case, I will call for a mover and a seconder to carry the following items by exception resolution. Those are 10.3.1, final adoption of local planning policies. 10.3.2, revocation of local planning policies. 10.3.3, advertising of draft local planning policies. 10.3.4, proposed additions to educational establishment, lot 1333, number 17, Craigie Crescent, Manning. 10.3.5, Hurlingham Living Stream Project. 10.4.1, listing of payments December 2023. 10.4.2, monthly financial statements, December 2023. 10.4.3, listing of payments, January 2024. And 10.4.4, monthly financial statements, January 2024. Can I have a mover for those items, please? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Someone to second? Councillor Choi, thank you. Does anyone oppose the passage of those items? Councillor Cridland?
I don't oppose.
Thank you. Okay. No one opposing, then we declare these items carried. All of those items have just been passed by exception resolution in accordance with clause 5.5 of the City of South Perth Standing Orders Local Law 2007, and the officers' recommendations have been accepted by council. So we'll now be moving on to those reports identified to be withdrawn for discussion this evening. So I am conscious that there's a lot of people in the gallery who are interested in, one of at least 3 items on the agenda for tonight. So I am going to move a motion that, in accordance with clause 5.2 of the City of South Perth Standing Orders Local Law, that item 12.1, which is a notice of motion by Councillor Nick Coveney, entitled Hooning Along the Peninsula, item 10.1.1, entitled Co-located Hockey Facilities within the City of South Perth, and item 12.5, a notice of motion by Councillor Bronwyn Waugh, entitled Sports Spaces Collier Reserve, Option to Lease, that those 3 items be heard first in that order. Could I have a seconder for that motion, please? Councillor Waugh, thank you. Does anyone oppose those 3 items being heard first in that order? No? Councillor Cridland?
I don't oppose.
All right, thank you. So in that case, that's what we'll do. We'll press ahead. We'll go to item 12.1, a notice of motion by Councillor Nick Coveney, entitled Hooning Along the Peninsula. Councillor Coveney, I understand that there's a revised motion that you and Councillor Choi have developed. If you like, you can simply move that as the originating motion, if you'd like to do so.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I move that council request that the CEO to, number 1, investigate the options for the temporary closure of A, the Millers Pool Car Park 11 between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. every day for a period of up to 3 months, which land is described as Lot 20 on Deposited Plan 214831 and 214832, contained in Certificate of Title LR 3119, Folio 157, and B, the thoroughfare leading to Mill Point Boat Ramp Jet Ski Area Car Park 12 between 10 p.m. and 5 a.m. every day for a period of 3 months, which land is described as Lot 20 on Deposited Plan 214831 and 214832, containing Certificate of Title LR 3119, Folio 157. Point 2, until such time as Council considers the report described at paragraph 6, they A, install and or retain the concrete barrier preventing use of the western portion of the Millers Pool Car Park 11 that extends under the Kwinana Freeway Bridge. B, they install a temporary camera and lighting in the vicinity of the Millers Pool Car Park 11 to monitor and deter antisocial behaviour, with a location determined in consultation with the local police, and share with the local police any hooning activity footage captured on the city's portable CCTV camera. And C, to monitor, record and collate vehicle speeds from the existing speed detecting and display signs at a point along Mill Point Road between Millers Pool and the signalised intersection of Labouchere Road, which such data to then be provided to the local police. Point 3, to engage in the following advocacy work with the following other key stakeholders. A, write a letter to the officer in charge of the Kensington Police Station, Senior Sergeant Michael Tite, requesting the following measures be undertaken along Mill Point Road between Millers Pool and the signalised intersection of Labouchere Road. 1, the trial of a noise monitoring camera. 2, a police blips to target antisocial behaviour and non-compliant vehicles, including but not limited to high risk and erratic driving behaviours and speeding. And 3, a traffic management assessment and recommended action plan, including but not limited to recommendations on a suitable speed camera system and automatic number recognition cameras. And then B, write a letter to the member for South Perth, Mr Jeff Baker, MLA, seeking his support to advocate Paul Papalia, Minister for Police, Mr Cole Blanche, Commissioner for Police, and Officer in charge of the Kensington Police Station, Senior Sergeant Michael Tite, for the measures referred to in paragraph 3A herein. And C, to write a letter to Main Roads WA requesting that the speed limit be reduced to 40 kilometres an hour along Mill Point Road between Millers Pool and the signalised intersection with Labouchere Road, the South Perth Esplanade and Men Street. Number 4, consider the merits of the potential to use noise cameras to monitor and deter anti-social driving behaviour that impacts South Perth residents by way of excessive noise. Feedback to Council to include a review and analysis of the following. A, the legislative framework in WA in relation to the potential use of noise cameras, including the ability for fines to be issued based on noise camera evidence. B, any views of the relevant authorities such as the WA Police, WA Department of Transport and the WA Environmental Protection Authority. C, the noise camera program any other local governments use around Australia. D, the likely cost of using noise camera technology, including purchasing equipment, integration, administration and operation costs and any potential revenue. And E, the feasibility of undertaking a trial of noise camera technology, including to collect data on the scale and frequency of the noise being generated by hooning activities, particularly in the vicinity of the Millers Pool car park and between Millers Pool and the signalised intersection with Labouchere Road, where noise generating antisocial driving behaviour is a known issue. Point 5, consider any recommendations to Council on how it is proposed to further reduce hooning and antisocial behaviour in South Perth and any other hotspot areas identified in the district. And number 6, report to Council as soon as possible, but by no later than May 2024 Ordinary Council meeting. A, the review and any recommendations for paragraphs 4 and 5 herein. B, any update on the outcome of paragraphs 2 and 3 herein, including any recommendations as a result of these actions. C, the options including cost estimates for a permanent camera and increased lighting to be installed in the vicinity of the Millers Pool car park. And D, the options including cost estimates for the temporary closures referred to at paragraph 1 herein. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coveney. Councillor Choi, I understand you'd like to second that? So seconded? All right. Councillors, does anyone oppose this notice of motion? Councillor Brenda Brandis?
Yeah, question, Mr Mayor.
Far away.
Yeah, it's just, I think Councillor Coveney's got the right paragraph here. So in paragraph 2, you referenced paragraph 6 below, which I think is correct, but the hard copy I've got in front of me says paragraph 4, so I'm just wondering if the right one is with the administration.
All right, so that's been corrected?
That's not been corrected, yes.
Thank you so much. Okay, and thank you for the question, Councillor Brenda Brandis. Councillors, does anyone oppose this notice of motion? Councillor Brenda Brandis?
Sorry, just another question, Mr Mayor.
Sure.
Just with regard to, I realise obviously a report will come back with regard to cost, but just I realise there's quite a comprehensive amount of work. Is there any indication as to the amount of time and any indicative costs with regard to any of these attributes that have been listed?
Who should I send that to? Mr Bradford?
We don't really have any indicative costs. That's the whole idea of the notice of motion. To get to the report to Council will be staff effort.
Thank you. Councillors, does anyone oppose the notice of motion? Councillor Choi?
Sorry, Mr Mayor, do we have to give our reasons?
No, not yet. I'm asking if
sorry.
anyone opposes. If
you
no
do
one
that after.
opposes, I'll use my powers under the standing orders to declare the motion carried unanimously.
Oh, so we can't state our reasons?
We've got a pretty full agenda, Councillor Choi. It's 7:30 and we still haven't moved a single resolution. Councillor Quidlin, do you oppose the motion?
I am not opposed.
All right. Well, if no one opposes, I will use my powers under the standing orders to declare this motion carried unanimously. Thank you all. We'll move on to the next item onto the agenda, which has been withdrawn for discussion, which is item 10.1.1, entitled Co-located Hockey Facilities within the City of South Perth. We do have an officer recommendation before us. I haven't received any alternative motions or any amended motions. Would someone like to move the officer recommendation? Councillor Choi?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I've also got a question.
I'll just see if there's anyone seconding the motion first, Councillor Choi. Does anyone wish to second the officer recommendation? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Councillor Choi, the floor is yours.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So should I ask the question second or ask the question first?
I might, because again, if no one opposes this, I'll probably simply have it pass unanimously, but if you do have a question, then please ask it.
Okay, great, thank you. So at the 27 June 2023 OCM, a number of organisations were listed on page 13 of the officer's report as relevant in developing the Collie Reserve Hockey Facilities Feasibility Report, including but not limited to Penrose College and Como Secondary College, with whom the appointed Recreation Master Planning Consultant, Dave Landfear Consultancy, met with those organisations. I've been trying to seek a copy of the consultant's consultation feedback for those identified stakeholders, noting they do not appear to have been included in the consultation output on page 57 of the feasibility report as was provided to Council. Is the City able to comment on this or request this information from the consultant if for whatever reason it wasn't included in their report to the City?
Ms Shaw, should I send that to you?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So the summary of the consultation was included as an appendices to the feasibility report. However, I think I mentioned earlier tonight in response to public question time that the level of detail I think you're seeking was not included in those responses. So we don't have a copy of the addresses of those submitters.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillors, does anyone oppose the officer recommendation that's been moved and seconded? Councillor Cridland?
Sorry, I have no questions and I'm not opposed.
Thank you. All right, well, if no one opposes the officer recommendation, I'll simply use my powers under the standing orders to declare that carried unanimously. Thank you all. That brings us on to item 12.5, which is a notice of motion from Councillor Bronwyn Ward entitled Sports Spaces Collier Reserve Option to Lease. Councillor Ward, would you like to read the motion and then I'll see about a seconder.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Yes, I move that Council requests the Chief Executive Officer to negotiate with Wesley South Perth Hockey Club, WASP, to prepare a deed granting a 3-year call option to lease over a portion of Collier Reserve, option to lease for a period of 21 years, subject to the terms identified in Clause 2 below. 2, resolves that the option to lease include the following terms. A, the option period within which WASP can exercise the option to lease will be 3 years commencing on the date when the last party signs the option to lease, after which time the option will lapse. B, the option to lease cannot be assigned by WASP. C, the lease to be granted under the option to lease must include the following terms. 1, a term of 21 years in respect to the building footprint and the footprint of the hockey field, being the leased premises, with a non-exclusive licence with priority access by WASP during the hockey season and pre-season over those other parts of the reserve that sit between the building and the hockey field, being the licensed area, for a corresponding term, with construction of the building and hockey field to occur during the term of the lease. 2, the licensed area must be available for use by members of the general public for activities such as walking, dog exercise and other passive recreation activities when not in use by the WASP. 3, the permitted use of the leased premises and the licensed area and the rights granted to WASP under the lease must 1, be for the purpose of a sports space in accordance with the priorities outlined in the key recommendations of the South Perth Community Facilities Plan 2019 to 2033, principally hockey, and 2, be consistent with the priorities, outcomes and strategies and in furtherance of the strategic direction headed community as outlined in the City of South Perth Strategic Community Plan 2021 to 2031. 4, WASP must at its expense keep the leased premises and licensed area safe and in good tenantable and substantial repair order and condition, fair wear and tear accepted, having regard to the condition of the leased premises as at the date of practical completion of WASP's construction of the building and hockey field. And 5, WASP's repair and maintenance obligations will include structural and capital repairs. D, WASP's exercise of the option under the option to lease will be subject to the following conditions precedent. 1, WASP obtaining development approval to construct the club facilities and hockey field within the leased premises, being the development. 2, WASP must demonstrate to the City's satisfaction that it has secured funding for the development. 3, WASP preparing and submitting to the City and the City approving a tree management plan for the development footprint which endeavours to retain as many existing trees on the reserve as possible and provides for the planting of replacement trees on the reserve to replace those removed during construction, with the lease to impose an obligation on WASP to comply with this tree management plan. 4, WASP is to negotiate in good faith with other user entities or organisations to 1, enter into 1 or more subleases or licences for the use of all or part of the facilities constructed by WASP at peppercorn rent and for a minimum area prescribed by the City during the term of the lease, or 2, demonstrate to the satisfaction of the City that it has made all reasonable attempts to reach agreement with other user entities or community-based incorporated associations for the use of all or part of the facilities constructed by WASP at a peppercorn rent for a minimum area under sublease or licence but failed to reach agreement. 3, insofar as is necessary to the extent that this motion is inconsistent with the Council's decision of the 27th of June 2023, Council hereby rescinds that decision. And 4, notes that entry by the City into the lease agreement will be subject to A, Council approval for the terms of the option to lease and the final boundaries of the leased premises and the licensed area, and B, consent of the Minister for Lands to the lease under Section 18 of the Land Administration Act 1997, and C, such option and lease to be presented to Council at its August 2024 Ordinary Council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Waugh. Councillor Navard. Sorry?
I had 2 questions.
I'll just see about a seconder first, and then I'll give you that opportunity. Is there any? I'll ask a question after it's been seconded, and then we'll see about that. Would anyone like to second Councillor Waugh's motion? Okay. I understand that there might be an amendment or a correction to the notice of motion. All right. If you could perhaps let us know how it's different to what we've just read.
Yes, it actually just relates to item number 3, insofar as it's necessary to the extent that the motion is inconsistent. I've had some further discussions with the council, and we're of the view that it's not inconsistent, so the rescission is not necessary.
All right, so just to clarify, the notice of motion, delete the paragraph 3 that you read initially? Okay, and renumber presumably paragraph 4 accordingly.
Thank you.
And that would mean that only a simple majority is required for this motion. An absolute majority is no longer required for paragraph 3. Okay. Thank you, Councillor Waugh, for clarifying that. Councillors, is there anyone who wishes to second Councillor Waugh's notice of motion? Councillor Prendeville, thank you. Councillor Waugh, the floor is yours.
Thank you. Let me start by saying I don't care about hockey. I don't play it, and nobody in my family plays it. But I care about our community's needs.
Sorry, Councillor Waugh. Members of the gallery, please no interjections. We listen to who's speaking with respect. Thank you. Please continue, Councillor Waugh.
I care about our community's needs more than I care about my own needs. That is why I dedicated a significant portion of my own time to reading the background documents, all 422 pages of the full feasibility study, as well as the preliminary studies and all of the notes and recommendations in all of the previous council minutes. And I have come to my own conclusions. The motion that I'm putting forward is to grant WASPs an option to investigate the possibility for them to use Collier Reserve. This option is not a development application for a synthetic turf. It is not an application to clear trees. It is not an approval that interrupts other users, such as dog walkers and other users of Collier Park. They will be accommodated, I am sure, in any future proposal. And it is not an application for funding from the city. This is the grant of an option subject to conditions. Ultimately, any exercise of an option must be subject to conditions, and this includes, as stated at page 90 of the agenda in clause D, 1, a development approval, 2, a demonstration that WASPs have secured funding for the development, and 3, a tree management plan. So let me make the position clear. Firstly, the option is to grant a lease for a period of 21 years. Second, it requires that WASPs liaise with and deal with other users of the Collier Reserve space. And third, it requires that WASPs satisfy council in respect of funding. So in my view, it's time to level up South Perth. This proposal is the subject of a report that I have submitted outlining the history, but I want to go over that in short form. Between 2012 and 2016, WASPs liaised with the council in respect to the building of the synthetic turf at Richardson Park. In 2016, a GHD report recommended expansion at Richard Park. Council became involved and encouraged the move to Collier Reserve. In 2019, the South Perth Community Facilities Plan had its key recommendation that the city work with Wesley, South Perth Hockey Club, Wesley College and Hockey WA and other stakeholders for the relocation of WASPs to Collier Reserve, incorporating a synthetic hockey turf, grass hockey fields and club rooms. That plan was dealt with in open council over 2 meetings and discussed widely before adoption. This was an open, proper and transparent process. This is the resolution of council that remains on the books of council. Let me emphasise that further. This council adopted a long-term plan from 2019 to 2033 with that key recommendation at its heart. This is not something that is incidental, it is a key recommendation.
Further, this key recommendation was adopted by this council before I was on council, before Councillor Prendeville was on council, and before Councillor Coveney was on council. I know that good governance requires that we adhere to our strategic plans and seek to implement them. It is the anathema to good governance to plan on the run, to chop and to change and to be unpredictable, or to say one thing in a strategic plan and then do the opposite. Following the South Perth Community Facilities Plan, Council encouraged WASPs to undertake a pre-feasibility study that was adopted by Council on the 24th of November 2020. Council proceeded further and adopted its Strategic Community Plan 2020 to 2031 that included under the 4 strategic directions under the heading Leadership, a local government that is receptive and proactive in meeting the needs of our community. The WASPs are encouraged to continue to proceed to full feasibility study by Council. This full feasibility study was carefully drafted and presented to City in November 2022, and some 7 months later referred to Council at its meeting in June 2023. The June 23 decision for Council not to proceed with the synthetic turf was a significant blow. The decision was based on an office report that has now been answered by the report by David Lanphier that was circulated to the councillors 2 weeks ago. Now, what you have is a very different proposal. It is not for the Council to proceed with the synthetic turf, but to grant an option to lease to the WASPs. Right now, we are faced with losing a club of 90 years history in our city, of one of the most inclusive sports. We cannot in good conscience close the doors on the WASPs while we say that we are acting consistent with our role to represent the interests of the ratepayers and provide guidance. What you are asked to decide on tonight is at the heart of our responsibilities. It is to follow the requirements of the Local Government Act. This club has at its heart and soul in our city. This club attracts players to our city. This club presents opportunities for our children, for their health, well-being, networks, and these opportunities are lifelong. This council endorsed and adopted a plan for providing public facilities in 2019. One of the key recommendations of the plan is to relocate the WASPs to Collier Reserve, and we need to stick to the strategic direction and now give them that opportunity to have a place to call home. This is not about funding, it is not about a development application, it is not about the removal of trees or affecting other uses of the park.
Councillor Waugh, sorry to interrupt. That is 5 minutes. I will move a motion that you be granted a further 5 minutes. Councillors, is there anyone that will second that motion? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Councillors, please cast your votes on a motion that Councillor Waugh be granted a further 5 minutes to speak. And Councillor Cridland, how would you like to vote?
I vote yes.
Thank you. And that was unanimous. Thank you, Councillor Waugh. You have a further 5 minutes to speak.
This is acting consistent with our strategic approach, and I ask you all to support the motion that I have moved.
Thank you, Councillor Waugh. Councillor Prendeville, you're the seconder. Would you like to speak?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. The City of South Perth has a lack of sporting facilities. This is no secret. Before us is an opportunity. One of our largest, oldest, most inclusive, most diverse sporting clubs is seeking a facility to secure their future and have been doing so for over a decade. Motion 12.5 is an intelligent and practical approach that is not committing the city to financial contribution and eliminates risk. The council set the parameters. This council approves each stage. Perth is the home of Australian hockey. Our national men's team is currently ranked 3rd in the world and our women's is ranked 4th. These teams live and train in Perth utilising the Perth Hockey Stadium. The stadium has recently been lucky enough to secure a remarkable upgrade and will receive 2 new synthetic turfs. So we have 4 turfs accommodating 2 national teams in their training squads, our WA Thundersticks men's and women's squads, our under-21, under-18, under-15 state teams, our state country men's and women's, our state masters men's and women's training and competing at certain times of the year, including a Thundersticks Talent Academy. Underneath that sits our 3 home clubs, Wasps, Vic Park and Curtin Hockey, plus the high schools that utilise the turf such as Wesley and Como. That is a lot of hockey players to accommodate, and yes, Hockey WA have acknowledged that there will potentially be extra turf time available to the home clubs. The reality is there is a hierarchy. Time day turf preference will always go to the national, state and training programs. Working with our association to get the best out of this high performance facility is a door we need to keep open, obviously unanimously. The point this sporting club is trying to make is that it does not solve their issue of future sustainability. This is an issue they have been communicating with the City of South Perth for over a decade. This High Performance Hockey Centre gives them more access to synthetic turf, wonderful, but the rest of the potential opportunities that are on offer are mostly already received by the club. It does not solve the issue they are facing of finding volunteers, securing sponsors, retention of players, connecting juniors with their hockey idols. The past decade, lots of work has been done in search of the best outcome. They have been continually encouraged and advised by the City of South Perth to continue their work, progress their feasibility studies, showing an openness and positivity towards their goal. 2012, the City of South Perth, through an application of Department Sport and Rec small grant funding, approved a contribution towards the search of the facility. The Department of Sports and Rec advised Wasps Hockey Club to look further than Richardson Park. A GHD feasibility study was done to determine whether or not their current home would facilitate their goal. The city, however, saw Richardson Park as not the most suitable and Collier Reserve was identified. 2019, by identifying the expected costs of these facilities, Wasps partners with Wesley College, and without requesting any financial contribution from the city, a feasibility study was performed at Collier Reserve. The response of the city was positive, noting the club as financially sustainable and supporting their endeavour. We all saw the amount of work that has been put into this, as representative from the club produced hundreds of pages of documents in front of us last week. We are reminded that in our Strategic Community Plan 2021 to 2031, under the strategic direction of community, referring to outcome 1.2 community infrastructure, 1.2.1 is stating maintain current and plan, develop and facilitate community infrastructure to respond to community needs and priorities. As mentioned, our 2019 Community Recreation Facilities Plan clearly states a key recommendation, being the city works with Wasps, Wesley and Hockey WA and other stakeholders for their relocation to Collier Reserve. Collier Reserve being the most underutilised reserve in South Perth, in the city of South Perth, recognised as a sporting space. Exclusive use needs to be acknowledged. The reality is there are lots of sports that require facilities that are in fact exclusive use to that particular sport. We have golf clubs, tennis clubs, lawn bowls clubs, croquet and others in the City of South Perth, all of which are exclusive use by the City of South Perth residents and others, all of which bring joy and connectedness to the community and all of whose grounds are full of players, young and old of varying skill levels, and all of whom are an essential part of our community. The Wasps Hockey Club have made it very clear that they are open to other users, and in fact it'd be a prerequisite for the approval. They have successfully shared facilities with the South Perth Cricket Club for decades and are open to designing a facility to be able to cater for other user groups. This is something we need to be capitalising on to include other groups or clubs to further solve the issue of our lack of facilities within the city.
Sorry to interrupt, Councillor Prendeville. That is 5 minutes. I will move a motion. You be granted a further 5 minutes to speak. Could I have a seconder, please? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Councillors, please cast your votes on a motion that Councillor Prendeville be granted a further 5 minutes. Councillor Quidland, how would you like to vote?
I vote yes.
That was unanimous. Thank you, councillors. Councillor Prendeville, you have a further 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, councillors. This isn't new. Building and managing a hockey facility with clubhouse turf and grass fields. There are numerous hockey clubs operating this same business model and it is proven to work. This club has been operating for 90 years and there is no evidence that it is or could be financially unsustainable. In fact, the city itself commented that it is financially sustainable. The reality of this motion is, if the funds cannot be raised, the project does not go ahead. So what is the solution? How about we approach this as a collaboration? It is stated in this motion that we work with groups such as the South Perth Tree Canopy Advocates to do everything we can to minimise damage, loss of trees and incorporate as much extra native planting as we can. We work with community groups and other sporting clubs to co-locate, combine and share where possible. And we work with the community to cater for other needs such as safe dog exercise areas, public toilets, cafe kiosk offerings. This becomes not just about hockey, but community. And this can be said about all of the sporting club homes within the city. It is about building a safe space where people can enjoy human connection, physical and mental benefits of sport and belonging to a club. Como Secondary College do not currently have their own turf, but this is an opportunity that could It could be a stakeholder involved and included in the process. I see no reason why this space cannot be used by other local schools, Country Week hockey, general development and carnivals. I have seen hockey turf be temporarily transformed into tennis courts used for lacrosse, ultimate frisbee and other activities. I recognise that it is no surprise that I am in support of this motion, and I have acknowledged that I have had an involved history with this particular hockey club through my declaration of interest. Through my election, something I spoke on was supporting and providing resources for sporting clubs and community facilities. Yes, I am the ex-president of WASPs, and I am a lot of other things, as we all are. I am a mother, a wife, a volunteer, a ratepayer, Kensington Primary School community member and parent, and an elected member. Elected on the promise of supporting sport and recreation, on the promise of listening to the community and responding to their needs, of being transparent and assessing every item that comes up in council with an open mind. My assessment of this item has resulted in the support of 12.5 for all of the reasons I have described. The discussion of our desperate need for better sports facilities is prevalent all over our city. The decision is in the numbers, and there is more community sport for better facilities and for this facility than there is against. 12.5 means the council has more control. It means that if the conditions cannot be met, then the facility does not get built. The status quo remains at Collier Reserve. This is not a concrete commitment to the build of this hockey facility. It is simply, as stated, a fair go with low risk. Let us not turn our backs on this opportunity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Prendeville. Councillor Navard, if you'd like to ask, by all means, please.
Yes, I have two questions here. The first one is, based on a lease licence arrangement within this proposed tender for Collier Reserve, is there any constraint on what size a building footprint might be?
Mr Adams, should I send that to you or to Ms Shaw? Ms Shaw.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So part 4 of the notice of motion required that council approve the terms of the option to lease, and that includes any final boundaries of the lease premises in the licensed area. So those boundaries would need to be negotiated as part of that process, having regard to the required area for the facility itself. In terms of any limitations prescribed, Development Control Policy 5.3, which is use of reserved land, which is a Department of Planning, Lands and Heritage policy, that doesn't actually specify any plot ratio, height, building limitations related to the design itself within that policy. But what it does do is say that any application that would be submitted would need to be considered having regard to the nature and scale of the proposal in relation to the surrounding streetscape and amenity of the area and the intended purpose of the reserve. So effectively, the West Australian Planning Commission, when they were considering a future development application, would need to consider the context of the reserve and the surrounding residential premises in respect to the design of the future facility itself.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. And a second question, Councillor Navard?
Yes, thank you. Within the non-executive licence, within the non-exclusive licence area, what kind of activity would be covered by the purpose of a sports space?
Ms Shaw, can I send that one your way?
Thank you, Mr Mayor. So sports spaces are effectively active areas of public open space. So it differs to passive areas of open space that are used for, say, environmental conservation and the like. In relation to the recommendations contained within the Community Recreation Facilities Plan, it specifically mentions that synthetic hockey turf, grass, hockey fields and club rooms is what was inferred in relation to the sports spaces in this respect.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillors, is there anyone, Councillor Choi, question or speaking?
I've got some questions as well, please, Mr.
Fire away.
The first one is, can the city please clarify and confirm that Richardson Park is able now to have a synthetic turf hockey pitch installed if the Wasp Hockey Club were, to change their mind and consider that option, and why that would be the case now compared to the past, please?
Who should I send that to? Ms Shaw or Ms Amprimo? Mr Bradford.
Okay. So in the work we did for 10.1.1, we considered a whole range of other sites within the city controlled by the city, but also other sites, and looked at them in the context of what had been considered previously, but also some other ways of achieving things. In discussions around Richardson, the conclusion from that was quite clearly that whilst there are possible sites, every site in the city had significant issues with it, and they varied across the sites. The original proposal for Richardson was a turf in the centre between the two cricket fields, cricket ovals, and that would require changes to car parking, loss of trees, and there's a significant change in level between the two ovals, and that would be problematic as well. And that wasn't proceeded with for a number of reasons. In our reconsideration of that, we did identify that, still subject to further consideration and lots of challenges, that you might be able to squeeze a turf in up against the freeway on the western edge of Richardson. And that's about as far as we went. So it still has some significant challenges and would require further investigation, as are all the other sites. So it's not, yes, you could just do it.
Thank you, Mr Bradford. Another question, Councillor Choi?
Yes, thank you through the chair to CEO Bradford. Is the city able to recommend a contract to a lessee or operator without or before the requisite and appropriate financial evidence to support its ability to proceed?
Who should I send that to? Mr Adams?
So before we actually got to the point of signing any option or lease documents, then we would have all the appropriate conditions regarding and have done all our appropriate due diligence. We wouldn't recommend something to council for final sign off where that hadn't been done. This isn't a motion that will result in that happening. What it will result in is us working with WASPs to determine a lease document or an option to lease document that can go forward to council with all of those considerations in place, so that council can make an informed decision on the actual lease document.
Thank you, Mr Adams. Another question, Councillor Choi?
Yes, thank you through the chair to Director Adams. Are there any foreseeable implications on water use, including licensing and allocations, and any associated irrigation system, stormwater and bore infrastructure requirements that would likely need to be investigated if there were new hockey playing fields, including a synthetic turf hockey pitch installed at Collier Reserve? And what could the likely cost for this be, please?
Ms Anne Primo, can I send that your way?
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. Page 34 of the feasibility study estimates that 5,250 kilolitres per year will be required for watering 7 days per week during the winter season only. Additional water will be required for the maintenance of the turf during the summer month, which has not been specified in the feasibility study, and further restrictions may be imposed by the Department of Water Environmental Regulation. There's an allocation of approximately 20,000 kilolitres per annum for irrigation of Collier Reserve currently under the city's licence. For the reserve vegetated streetscape along Thelma Street, the operations centre grounds, part of the city's nursery, and for the city's mobile tree watering services. The actual water usage, so just to be clear, that 20,000 is a sort of indicative number because it comes out of our citywide licence. The actual water usage agreements will be determined through any subsequently leasing agreement. However, for a long-term lease arrangement, the city would seek to have the lessee secure their own abstraction licence and related infrastructure. This would usually result in the city's allocation being reduced relative to the area of land that the city would no longer be irrigating. So there's no guarantee that however much the city's abstraction licence was reduced by would be equivalent to any licence that was granted to WAFs, and there would be no guarantee that that abstraction licence that would be granted to WASPs would be sufficient for their needs. That would be determined by Department of Water and Environmental Regulation. Currently the city incurs costs to run the pump and bore and maintenance for it, and the replacement costs on all the infrastructure associated with that area. the feasibility study details that infrastructure headworks, iron filtration, backwash systems may be required depending on whether scheme or bore water was used, which have various costs.
Thank you, Ms Zamprimo. Any further questions, Councillor Choi? No. Okay. Councillor Brenda Abrandis, speaking or a question?
Some questions, Mr. Mayor.
Far away.
Okay. I realise that Wesley College have a lease over the Collins Oval. Has the Collins Oval been explored with regard to the possibility of providing a turf and also a clubhouse as opposed to Collier Reserve?
Who should I send that to? Ms Shaw? Or Mr Adams? Mr Bradford?
I'll do it. That's all right. I've got it. So Collins is not controlled by the city, as you point out. It's leased directly by Wesley from DPLH. And so I understand it has been considered in the past. We did look at it, and obviously that would be a matter for WASPs and Wesley and the Planning Commission to deal with. So we didn't go into any detail. I would observe, though, that in making the recommendation in June 2023, one of the concerns, the risks that the city identified was the financial risk of failing to complete the construction, failing to be able to fund the ongoing operation, and failing to be able to meet the asset life cycle replacement as a key risk for the city. And that risk comes about because if you're building an asset on land you control, it's pretty hard to separate the asset from the land, and so you incur that risk. One of the advantages of Collins would be that risk could be avoided because it would actually be built on land that's managed by Wesley. But that isn't something that we considered in detail.
Thank you, Mr Bradford. Councillor Brenda Abrandis?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. This evening we heard about a main sewer that requires consideration. I'm just wondering if the city has any indication as to the amount of additional public open space that may be lost because of the main sewer. So, yeah, my question is, have we considered that? Do we know the impact on public open space?
Ms Zamprimo, is that one I should send your way?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will try and answer that as I understand the question. The sewer main as it stands doesn't impact on the public open space because it exists underneath the reserve. It's once you look to develop or change the land use on top of that sewer main that you may or may not get consent from the Water Corporation to do that, if that answers your question. But if not, please feel free to.
Thank you, Ms Zamprimo. Councillor Brenda Abrandis?
Yeah, thank you, Ms Zamprima. And probably just a follow-up question with regard to that, just for clarification. So if there is the option exercised to actually develop that area, would that impact the main sewer? Would that need to be physically moved? Are you aware of the impact of its location?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. It would be something that Water Corp would determine whether or not. Sometimes they will allow development over their assets, and other times they won't. It depends on the age, the construction, how deep it is, what type of asset it is. So until those conversations were had with Water Corporation, it would be a little bit difficult for me to say whether or not they would approve any development on top of it.
Thank you, Ms Zamprimo. Councillor Brenda Abrandis?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. And just another question. So with regard to Como Secondary College, we've obviously heard that they're obviously quite interested in obviously development and seeking funds, obviously a very underutilised, underfunded school for a long time. What extent of conversations has the city had, and is the city also aware of conversations that maybe Wesley or WASPs have actually had with Como Secondary College in regard to their specialist hockey academy?
Ms Shaw, is that one I should send your way?
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. So the city has had discussions with the principal of Como Secondary College, but we haven't had any formal discussions or contacted the Department of Education. So as outlined in the option the investigation for item 10.1.1, one of the challenges with that option was that we're unsure of the ability or the willingness of the Department of Education to contribute financially towards a shared use facility at that location. We did raise the matter with WAS in our discussion with them. WAS maintains that the best solution for them is a holistic WAS facility, which would be at Collier.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Director Shaw. And just a final question with regard to public open space. So I realise, obviously, our public open space is obviously lower than the benchmark than where we should be, and we have a limited opportunity to do anything about that. With regard to the loss of this site, if the option is exercised, what sort of impact would that have on active public open space for the city, if you have an indicative estimate as to what that might look like?
Ms Shaw.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I actually had a look at this today. So at the 2021 census, with a population of 43,405, the active open space per person was 5 square metres per person, which is below the recommended requirement of 6 square metres. With the forecast that we have as part of Local Planning Scheme number 7 and future population growth, by 2050, we're looking at a population of 61,870, and that reduces the active open space down to 3.5 square metres per person. And so that's obviously not to say that this facility would not be considered public open space, because it is an active sports space, but that's the difference if we were to lose areas of public open space.
Thank you.
Thank you, Ms Shaw. Councillors, Councillor Brenda Abrandis? No? Okay. Councillors, is there anyone who wishes to speak against the notice of motion? Councillor Choi, I think, was first.
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. I understand that an assessment of all appropriate public open space sites owned and or managed by the city has not identified another more suitable space within the city of South Perth. However, the view is the prior in-principle support for the Wasp Hockey Club to investigate detailed feasibility for relocation to Collier Reserve and the inclusion of a related action in the city's Community Recreational Facilities Plan 2019 to 2023, which, by the way, only serves as a guideline, was partially due to a preliminary synergies identified between potential shared use community recreational facilities and users of the then proposed recreation and aquatic facility, known as the RAF, which, as no longer proceeding, is now irrelevant. A number of alternative options for Wasp Hockey Club have been identified, which, alongside the Australian High Performance Hockey Centre, require further exploration, that the City and Hockey WA could help the club to progress. This includes the possibility of Wasp Hockey Club installing a synthetic turf hockey pitch at their current location at Richardson Park, which was previously deemed unsuitable. Notably, the Wasp Hockey Club have entered into a 21-year lease over Richardson Park with the City just last year, on 1 April 2023. And with no train station plans in the near sight, referring to the WAPC's Perth and Peel at 3.5 million proposed public transport network for 2050 suite of planning documents, there is no need in the foreseeable future for the club to relocate. And I believe there is no intention for the city to seek that as well, with this lease now just being signed for 21 years. There is the opportunity also for liaisons with Como Secondary College, who host a hockey academy that offers a specialist hockey program, to negotiate access to any future synthetic turf hockey pitch as may be co-funded by the state. Not first exploring and exhausting these and any other possible alternative opportunities, given the challenges to public open space that have been discussed this evening and previously at other meetings, they may consequently present themselves, could potentially undermine the City and Council's position and work done to date. The club's proposed new hockey facility project cost reportedly rose from around 4.6 million in 2019 to around 14.8 million in mid-2023. The City, I believe, and please correct me if I'm wrong, have advised that it is unable to recommend a contract without the appropriate financial evidence to support its ability to proceed. For financial and numerous other reasons, including as comprehensively raised at the Council agenda briefing last week, there is concern that the Wasp Hockey Club may be further led down a path with a certain expectation that may ultimately again fail. Hence, working through the alternative options as identified and discussed at length may help the club to actually mitigate its own financial and other risks. The City has also advised that the State Government are unlikely to contribute financially towards any new standalone hockey facility in the district, and that a collaborative approach, i.e. co-location and shared access, to meeting the club's needs is the preferred outcome, with it also presenting the best chance of securing further state funding. It is the view no state government support for Wasp Hockey Club's new facilities proposal at Colliery Reserve has potential consequences for both the Wasp Hockey Club and the City in the expending of significant resources, and also financially for the City in meeting any required infrastructure upgrades to support a new hockey facility, which appears would ultimately be borne by ratepayers. With the value of this at this time unknown, but preliminary estimates reported presently up to the tune of around 2.6 million plus. Within a weakened economic period, this could result in higher than anticipated rates increases, competition with and/or delays to other community sporting and recreation facility upgrades that the City and Council have been working steadfast towards achieving. This includes the George Burnett Park Master Plan, where new courts and sports club change rooms are long overdue and sorely needed by the community. The City has also reported what potentially appears could be quite significant environmental concerns and challenges for the City if a synthetic turf is installed on Collier Reserve, and noting that no environmental site and impact assessment appear to have been carried out at this point or considered, unintended and undesirable environmental impacts could result that the City may then subsequently have to allocate and expend further resources to manage and mitigate. As the City has stated, the preferred approach for utilisation of public open space is via a public expression of interest process for all potential users, not a single user. Council has not long since made a decision already on this proposal, and consistency in Council's decision making is good governance. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Choi. Councillors, is there anyone who would like to speak in favour? Councillor Coveney.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. For over a decade, one of the oldest and largest sporting clubs in our city has been in search for a local home to accommodate their needs. For several years, Council has signalled support. In 2019, we resolved the Community Recreation Facilities Plan, which included a key recommendation: the City and Wasp work together to relocate to Collier. In 2020, Council endorsed a pre-feasibility study for Wasp to relocate to Collier. And in 2023, Council resolved that the City work with Wasp to find a local home. And yet the Wasps are no closer. Last week, the administration told us that discussions with Hockey WA could run upwards of 12 months, and that their motion and Councillor Waugh's motion could run parallel. As Lyle Kenny put it last week, we cannot keep kicking the can down the road. We must show leadership, and that time is now. My support should come as no surprise. During the elections last year, all candidates were asked about their position and their answers distributed. Those answers make for an interesting read only a few months later. Now, actions will speak louder than words. I wrote at the time, I will revisit all proposals with an open and independent mind, including but not limited to Collier. I was elected with 2/3 of the vote, the highest percentage of all wards, including the mayoral race. I say that support is indicative of the overwhelming support in our community for this motion. The construction of a hockey centre has been well publicised since at least 2022, more than 12 months before Council resolved to find Wasp a local home. That hockey centre is not in the City, it is not local. WASP stands for Wesleyan South Perth, not Wesleyan Bentley. More importantly, that hockey centre is not being built for the Wasps. It's a high-performance venue for our state and Australian teams. Local clubs will share the crumbs. This is akin to the Wasps' existing dilemma. There is no material change in what the centre will offer the Wasps. Access to synthetic turf does not resolve the issue, being the need for a single home. Former WASP President Mark Kerrigan told us it was significantly more difficult to secure sponsorship and volunteers without a single home. Current WASP President Janesse Gardner told us that volunteer levels at other clubs skyrocketed when they had a single home. And WASP player Alicia Torrey told us that their team sometimes trained at the centre and still needed to do part of their training at Collier, thus illustrating the inadequacy of that centre. Now, the Wasps do have a clubhouse and grass at Richardson. The difficulty with synthetic turf at Richardson is its configuration and the eventuality of relocating to make room for the train station. Whilst I accept that the station is not formally in the works, the freeway has been built out for this purpose. It's close to the zoo, Men Street precinct and the foreshore. I say it's inevitable, and sometimes all it takes is a change in government. In my election campaign, I promised to advocate for the station, and part of my objection to Richardson is influenced by that promise. In any event, if WASP to relocate, other sports could of course use that space in the meantime, and grass-only sports are much easier to relocate. Collier is the most underutilised of the 8 active reserves in our city by almost 50%. Morris Mundy, Challenger, George Burnett, Bill Graydon, James Miller, Ernest Johnson and Richardson. Many of those reserves are already flagged for other sports in the master plan. Just as opponents to this motion will say there is a centre being built down the road, with respect, there are even more reserves down the road. WASP do not discriminate by age or gender. Their membership is about half men, half women, half juniors, half seniors. It is a club for everybody. Many of their members live in our city. The city is home to at least 9 other sporting organisations with specific turf, notwithstanding they have less members than the WASPs, in most cases less than a third of the members. The Croquet Club, the Como Bowls Club, the Manning Bowls Club, the South Perth Bowls Club, the South Perth Tennis Club, the Hensman Park Tennis Club, the Manning Tennis Club, the Royal Perth Golf Course and Collier Golf Course. I, like I'm sure many others, do not access these turfs on a regular basis, if at all. The attempt by some to conflate finances at this impasse is premature. This motion does not commit the city to any financial contribution other than negotiating the lease. In any event, the WASPs are not seeking a financial contribution from the city other than towards car parking, power lines and lighting, and in my view, those should be upgraded in any event for reserves such as this. Even so, the council could pass this motion and theoretically refuse to make any contribution towards capital works if it so chose. I agree that the city should be prudent in ensuring it's not left with a half-finished building, but such risk can be easily managed by not permitting construction until the WASPs have secured funding and/or a guarantor. The administration does not have the authority to make representations on behalf of other stakeholders and has no knowledge of what they may or may not do. In any event, the feasibility study released just this month states that what is proposed
Councillor
is
Coveney,
viable.
sorry to interrupt, that is 5 minutes. I will move a motion that you be granted a further 5 minutes to speak. Could I have a seconder for that motion, councillors? Councillor Choi, thank you. Councillors, please cast your votes. Councillor Cridland, how would you like to vote?
I support that motion.
Thank you. That was unanimous. Councillor Coveney, you have another 5 minutes to speak.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. The principal of Wesley indicated that there are many working examples of hockey clubs which are financially viable and they don't have the added commitment and assistance from a school. Other single clubs include Melville, Fremantle, Southern River, Hale, EWA and Aquinas. As we heard from Alicia Torrey, the WASPs are losing their players to these clubs. I agree that Collier should be a co-shared facility, which is what Councillor Waugh's motion provides. As Lyle Kenny explained, the WASPs know how to share, having coexisted with the cricket club for 60 years. The principal of Wesley told us that the school allows access to its facilities more than any other high school, if not university in the state, and they welcomed use by Como Secondary. The demonisation of Wesley by a loud few is misguided. This is a school which educates our children, which opens its facilities to the public despite the great financial loss to them, which has been a pillar in our community for over 100 years. I do not accept that there is a material impact to existing users of Collier Reserve. The clubhouse and synthetic turfs only take up a small portion. Existing users will still have an abundance of access. Councillor Waugh's motion specifically seeks to protect recreational users and trees. Almost all the negative feedback that I have received has been from residents living directly opposite the reserve. The same sentiment, of course, expressed by residents living directly opposite Elm Street when a feasibility study for sport was resolved by council only a few months ago. With respect, you can't buy a house in the city and expect the block next door to stay vacant forever. As elected representatives, our job is to listen to and represent our community. All of them, not just the loudest. In November 2022, a survey found that 558 of the 607 responses, i.e. 92%, are in favour. In October 2023, our constituents, by virtue of who they voted for, told us they were in favour. And just this week, on the biggest community page in South Perth on social media, it attracted support for WASP to Collier 3-1. You couldn't ask for more evidence about community sentiment. Alicia Torrey told us that the Wasps were like her family. Councillors, if your home did not meet your family's needs and someone told you that the solution was to move half of them into a share house, would you consider that an appropriate long-term solution? Would that be good enough for your husband, for your wife, for your children? Is that an environment for your family to connect and thrive? If we do not pass this motion, that is what we are telling our community we accept. This motion goes beyond hockey and Wesley. I don't play hockey, I didn't go to Wesley, I don't have kids, so they don't go to Wesley. This motion is about our community. If we do not pass this motion, we are turning our backs on one of the oldest and largest clubs in our city. A club so intrinsically tied to our history, our fabric, and our identity. Councillors, I ask you, what will your legacy be? A council that said no, or a council that said yes? Not for me, not for you, but for our community and the families in our community. This is a line in the sand moment. Which side of history will you stand on? I ask you today to be brave. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coveney. Councillors, is there anyone who wishes to speak against the notice of motion who hasn't already spoken? Councillor Navard?
Both Wasps and Xavier hockey teams have expanded numbers of players. This was identified in Victoria Park's 2019 audit of sporting needs in the local area. They had considered both South Perth facilities within their consideration. In that 2019 Victoria Park audit, they also identified that demand for turf facilities could not be met, and that was pre-COVID. An increasing preference for more skilled hockey teams to play on turf rather than grass has further lifted the demand for provision of hockey play spaces offering that surface. An increase of just one turf pitch, as proposed for Collier Reserve, would be strained to address that demand. Pressure of demand on the availability of turf pitches would suggest that Wasps should not delay their discussions with Hockey WA and seriously consider increasing their presence at the Australian High Performance Hockey Centre to ensure a reasonable presence. Increase in player numbers during and after COVID for many outdoor sports has intensified competition for structured sports spaces for a variety of sports. So spaces that remain flexible, cross-seasonal and multifunctional are imperative to retain. It is unfortunate that earlier city documentation for a WASP's solution had confidently named Collier Reserve as that solution, and that WASPs therefore had ongoing expectations that a dedicated play space would be provided by the community. Sadly, planning conditions and solutions have to change when surrounding circumstances alter. WASP's aspiration to keep members together in a family environment in one place may be difficult to achieve via a home ground concept at Collier Reserve. When a club has a membership of around 800, then the usual behaviour relating to a feeling of group connectedness is that groups naturally break into smaller units. Sociological studies use 60 as an indicator of any subgroup beginning to form. So oneness is unlikely to be an outcome of WASPs occupying Collier Reserve, albeit with a larger club room. Away teams would be unlikely to return to home base simply because the clubhouse was bigger. City of South Perth has a population of somewhere between 43 and 45,000, And this is predicted to grow to around 60,000 by mid-2030s. Canopy cover and general foliage has been disappearing from private land in our city for more than 2 decades, and an onus has been placed on the city by our community to attempt to redress this disappearance by retaining tracts of greenery for unstructured sports spaces and unstructured recreation spaces for community members for their overall health, happiness and quality of life. There has been an approximate 50% increase in the registered dog population during and since COVID. So this also represents an increased demand on public open space to provide for dog-friendly spaces, preferably a walkable distance from home base. Over the Collier Reserve area and including an expansion to the parking space, there is a miscellany of approximately 100 plus trees. This presently provides habitat for a variety of species of all sizes and categories. Any proposed compensatory replanting elsewhere would be unlikely to offer a replacement biome. So these really set out the variety of concerns I have. Thank you, Mr. Mayor.
Thank you, Councillor Navard. Councillors, is there anyone who would like to speak in favour of the notice of motion who hasn't already spoken? Councillor Quidland, I should probably check in with you.
Oh, look, I might as well have a few words given that, what is the time? It's not yet midnight, so I might as well say a few things that I've said many times over the last, I don't know, more than 12 years. Never been able to convince the council of my position before, so maybe I'm shouting in the wind again, although I do hear at least some supporting voices tonight. Amongst the naysayers and the people questioning why would we ever consider assisting a sporting club with 800 people is the issue. Are we actually interested in our children? Do we actually think that they should have somewhere to play? Do we think a club that actually provides such a positive component to amenity in the city where, you know, boys and girls, men and women, young and old, get together, should actually have a home, something that's 90 years old, a club that's 90 years old, older than our city, should be supported? Or should we continue to stuff them around as we have by telling them that Richardson Park is not a suitable place when I thought it was? Tell them to investigate Collier. They do. And then tell them, well, actually, no, start again. You know, it is just reprehensible the way we have treated this club, and suggestions that we should impose conditions upon them that we wouldn't impose on any other community club, and to say that they are being treated differently when we have a myriad of single-use clubs, whether it's the Bridge Club, whether it's the senior citizens. Now, there's probably not many people left in the audience who are under senior citizen age, but you try getting into the senior cits if you're under their age limit. I think it might be 55, so I now just qualify, but I do know other people have been refused access to their facilities. You try going to the tennis club if you're not a member, or the croquet club. I think we just need to think about, are we going to provide proper facilities for our city? And we don't. And unfortunately, for the last, well, at least maybe 5-6 years, this council hasn't. We were going to provide a pool because people wanted it, but then we voted against it. We were going to provide some indoor sports courts so people, our kids mainly, could play basketball and volleyball and netball. We voted against that. Really? Are we actually serious about providing proper facilities, or are we just listening to the very few people who say, not opposite our house, not in our street, and I'm worried that I might pay an extra $1 so that our local kids can play cricket or footy or basketball or netball or hockey. And I don't play hockey. Well, actually, I lie. I have played 2 games of hockey in my life. I played one against my daughter and one against my son, both when they were in Minkies, which I think is when they're about 5. Haven't played since. My kids no longer play. I don't know how many kids there are in a Minkie team or how many people play in a hockey team, but I do know that it's a good club, as our tennis clubs and our croquet club and our footy club are all good clubs, and our bridge club, because they contribute to our community. And I think we shouldn't just think about ourselves and our rates and keeping our street quiet. Now, I love walking my dog. And yes, there are more dogs now. I got a COVID dog. And we love walking her down in the quietest park in all of South Perth, which is Collier. Often walk down there and there is no one. It's not a trouble to get across the street because the car parks are always empty. There's no parking problems down there. And it's lovely to go down there and have my dog chase the magpies around.
Sorry to interrupt, Councillor Cridland. Members of the gallery, can we please have quiet while elected members are speaking? That would be appreciated. Sorry to interrupt, Councillor Cridland. Please continue.
That's all right. I can't hear the heckles, can I say? But I assume I'm getting some. But yes, I enjoy walking my dog down there, and it would be in my personal interest if that area was to be quarantined so that it could be just for me and a couple of other people, so that I could walk my dog down there so she can chase the magpies. That'd be wonderful. But I think it's wrong for me to serve on council, for me to be selfish, and for me to just look after my interests. I need to think about others, and the benefit is to the community, I think, if this club is given the opportunity to have a home, and it provides such a positive aspect to South Perth.
Councillor Cridland, I will interrupt there because that is 5 minutes. I will move a motion that you be granted a further 5 minutes. Could I have someone to second that, please? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Councillors, please cast your votes. And Councillor Cridland, how would you like to vote?
I'll vote for myself.
Well, that makes it. I'm not waiting on one more. No, I'm still waiting on one more vote. Councillor Choi? Thank you. That was unanimous. Sorry for the interruption. You have a further 5 minutes, Councillor Cridland.
That's right. Well, there you go. I say decision tonight is, do we continue to kick the can down the road? Do we continue to listen to the people who say there's always a reason to get worried, to be nervous, to say not in my backyard? Or do we look at the bigger picture and say that we are a growing community because the government has said a lot more people are going to live in our city, and try and provide proper facilities and actually cater for one of the most positive aspects of our city, which is a club that, you know, when we look around and watch the news at night and we see, you know, juveniles being engaged in crime or people being antisocial, this is a club where you've got boys and girls, men and women, all interacting so positively, being healthy. Do we want to support them, or do we want to reject them? Do we want to say the South Perth Hockey Club needs to go to another suburb? Well, where would they go? We're saying they should go to Vic Park, to the Hockey Australia Stadium. Well, I know one of the coaches of the Australian team. His kids play for Wasps. And that's because it's a local club, and because it's a positive club, and because it has that community vibe. And the Perth Hockey Stadium just doesn't provide that. We will still have home games at Southern River and at Joondalup, because the emphasis and the reason why the hundreds of millions of dollars are spent on Hockey Australia facilities at Perth Hockey Stadium is because they need to deal with elite athletes who are going to World Championships and Olympics. They're not dealing with the minkies, the little kids from South Perth, who I think, although I love my dog so much, sometimes when my kids have been very annoying, I think almost as much as my kids, I think our kids are a little bit more important than my dog. Anyway, so I thank Councillor Ward for bringing this up. And let's just move this forward. Let's not kick this another dozen years down the road, please. It's just reprehensible what we've done with this club. Let's just be positive for once and not negative. And think about our kids, not the over 80s, but the under 8s. And I hope you'll support the motion.
Thank you, Councillor Cridland. Councillors, is there anyone who wishes to speak against the notice of motion? Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support active recreation and the role it plays in the community and the significant role the Wasps and Wesley College contribute to this city. I support the Wasps Hockey Club having a permanent location, and I've supported this evening's agenda item 10.1.1 for co-located hockey facilities. I also support a community that considers public open space as invaluable and the requirement that this retains its public access for passive and active use. Open space is an integral part of our culture. It defines Perth, contributing to the physical and mental health of our community. The City of South Perth public open space should comprise of freely accessible areas supporting recreation, relaxation, socialisation, and organised sporting facilities, including informal play and along with environmental protection. This motion does not achieve these outcomes for the benefit of the city residents and ratepayers. The successful exercising of this option will result in exclusive use of the significant space for Wasps and Wesley. Sharing of resources and invaluable public open space is what we should be endeavouring to achieve. The city currently has a population of just over 43,000, and that will increase with infill that's projected by 2050, as we've heard tonight, to be just over 60,000. This will result in a decrease in the public open space on average by about 30% per person, and that is significant. The city is established with limited opportunities to access new or create additional public open space. As an established local government, the city has very limited opportunities, as I've said, and we should be considering to retain that public open space because it is invaluable. The inner suburbs have been reported as having active open space of an average of just over 7 square metres per resident. And in this city, ours is significantly less than that at about 5 square metres. By 2031, the predicted shortfall in active open space in the central sub-region of Perth will be 79 hectares, and that's the equivalent of 36 senior AFL ovals or 110 senior soccer pitches. Public open space is essential to any community providing health, social, environmental and economic benefits. The Collier Reserve public open space contributes to the community sense of place identity and recreational opportunities, providing green relief to the ever-expanding urban environment. The Collier Reserve public open space provides a quality of life for residents in the immediate proximity and the wider district. We've heard from the community that places a very high value on the Collier Reserve public open space and will place an even greater value in the next couple of decades. We've heard from the experts and the administration have not supported Collier Reserve due to various reasons, financial feasibility and funding not being secured. The significant increase in the scope and scale of this proposed development is also a challenge, and the exclusive and single sport use to the exclusion of other recreating groups and the local community is a significant consideration. The proponent has also requested that the city contribute the capital costs. Whilst this may not be inappropriate, this may be significant and another burden. And another burden when we are offered an opportunity just down the road with the WA Hockey. Hockey as a sport requires dedicated playing surfaces that cannot readily be shared with other user groups. The playing surface is purpose-built and provides limited opportunities to be shared. When the Collier Reserve Hockey Facility study was considered on 27 June 2023, it was evident that there were various issues associated with this proposal. Now, some 8 months later, and still present today, some of these issues have not gone away. So I'm concerned that, something that was a major consideration has still not addressed some of the underlying issues. And some of these reasons, I will not be supporting this motion. Firstly, the project justification and community needs. The feasibility study demonstrates a single-use sporting club.
Councillor Brenda Abrandis, sorry to interrupt, that is 5 minutes. I will move a motion that you be granted a further 5 minutes. Councillors, Councillor Coveney, thank you. Councillors, please cast your votes on a motion that Councillor Brenda Abrandis be granted a further 5 minutes. Councillor Cridland, how would you vote there?
I vote yes.
Thank you. That was unanimous. Sorry for the interruption, Councillor Brenda Abrandis. You have a further 5 minutes.
Thank you, Mr. Mayor. Thank you, councillors. 1, project justification and community needs. This does not meet the wider community needs. 2, the project scale and scope. This was originally a $4 to $5 million capital construction. It is now $14.8 million. And with a significant larger project comes a significant impact on the field and the community. The one concern that was raised by deputies last week was, again, the oneness, keeping the team together. Again, this is questionable and maybe a little bit disingenuous with regard to the fact that a lot of the players do play away from home, and so bringing everyone back to one central location is probably not reasonable. The financial construction viability, as I've mentioned, it's $14.8 million, and we heard last week the Wasps have only got $100,000 cash on hand. So it is a significant undertaking to actually raise that sort of money over that period of time. 4, the current option with the Australian Hockey Centre at Curtin University requires significant consideration. We've got an offer on the table, and this offer can actually remove all the financial burden for everyone and also retain the public open space. All that needs consideration is working very closely with WA Hockey and ensuring that the scheduling of the games is undertaken. 5, the Department of Local Government is unlikely to be supportive, given that this is a standalone facility in lieu of a co-located community sporting club. 6, this option is inconsistent again with the community's benefit. Again, the community have indicated that they need the space for public recreation. Already the fields are used by a lot of other informal recreation and restrictions placed on that space. 7, the additional capital works that may be required. The city has indicated that we do not have the funding built into any capital out here in our 10-year long-term financial plan. 8, Wesley College does achieve synergies and gains a lot of financial outcome through their facilities. They already occupy prime locations across the city, including Collins Oval, the boat shed on Coode Street, subject for an expansion. They sought a 50% feasibility study contribution for the Sir James Mitchell Park, and now Collins Reserve. 9, environmental impact. The city has a canopy cover of less than 16% and it's declining daily through increased landfill and also shothole borer. The 43 trees identified, it's inappropriate to have discussions in context of endemic and non-endemic. Any tree that provides canopy cover is a valuable tree. The time it takes to reach maturity for those trees is many years, and we've heard that tonight. The benefit from the canopy cover and the geosequestration of carbon alone is a significant saving and needs to be taken into account. Non-endemic trees often provide valuable food and habitat, We just have to take a look at the macadamia trees, the pine nuts, the Cape lilacs, for the Carnaby cockatoos and the forest redtails. 10, delivering a better cost-effective service to the community means that we should be considering not wasting resources, ensuring that we actually build and develop structures that can be co-used. One of the mandates by state government is that we should look for efficiencies and economies in making sure that we do not waste resources and we actually utilise what we're actually, we get a greater
60 seconds remaining, Councillor Brenda Brandis.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. Get a greater utilisation from what we're actually building. For these reasons, and without any declaration of interest, I cannot support this option motion. When there is a gift that presents us tonight as a co-located hockey facility available with Hockey WA. I am concerned that the pressure with regard to wealthy private institutions do often end up achieving outcomes to the detriment of the community, and such land becomes privatised. For these reasons tonight, I cannot support this for the betterment of the community. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brenda Brandis. At this point, I'd usually ask if there's anyone else who wishes to speak for or against who hasn't already spoken, but I think I'm the only one left. So I'll say a few words, and I am speaking in favour. We have heard a great many deputations from members of our community last week, both for and against. All of us have also received a great volume of emails from concerned and interested members of our community. I've read all of those emails, and I'm sure that the other elected members are the same. To those of you that I haven't been able to respond to yet, I do apologise. There just simply wasn't enough time to respond to each and every one of you before tonight's meeting. This motion doesn't give WASPs a guaranteed pathway to the home that they want, but it does give them a chance. And after careful consideration, I am inclined to give them that chance. This isn't the final word on the subject. This matter will necessarily come back to Council in August. There's a lot of detail that needs to be worked out and a number of approvals that would have to be obtained. But perhaps WASPs and Wesley can overcome those challenges. They've asked for a chance, and on reflection, I am willing to grant them that chance. The arguments I would have made in favour have already been made by other elected members, so I'll simply offer an observation. Even if Council approves this motion, there is a non-zero possibility that the proposed lease or proposed development may not come to fruition. And so, under those circumstances, I would gently encourage WASPs, if they are not already doing so, maybe they are, I don't know, to maximise the benefit that they could achieve from Hockey WA. I'm certainly not claiming to know what is best for WASPs, better than WASPs themselves. I'm not doing that, but whatever Council's decision is tonight, it may be prudent to have a viable plan B. That's all from me. Everyone has now spoken, I believe. And with that, I'll invite Councillor Ward, if she would like to do so. No, don't want to wind up? Okay. In that case, I'll simply put this motion to the vote. We're voting on item 12.5, Councillor Ward's notice of motion entitled Sports Spaces Collier Reserve Option to Lease. Councillor Cridland, how would you like to vote?
I vote yes to the motion and that was put forward by Councillor Waugh.
Thank you. In that case, the notice of motion has passed 5 votes to 4. For those who are listening via YouTube, those who voted in favour were Councillor Waugh, myself, Mayor Greg Milner, Councillor Coveney, Councillor Prendeville and Councillor Cridland. Those who voted against were Councillor Brenda Brandis, Councillor Choi and Councillor Navard. Thank you all. I am conscious that we've been at this for almost 3 hours now, so I'm going to call well, if Councillor will indulge me, I'm going to move a motion that we have a 10-minute recess. Could I have a seconder for that, please? Councillor Prendeville, thank you. Oh, what did I say? I said 5-4. I meant to say 5-3. My apologies. It's been a long night. So, All those in favour, we can probably do this by a show of hands. All those in favour of a 10-minute recess? Councillor Cridland?
Yes, but please no more. I want to go to bed.
I can understand that. All right. So we'll reconvene at 4 minutes past 9 p.m. Perth time. All right, governance, are we back online? Outstanding, okay. Welcome back, councillors. Welcome back city staff. Welcome back anyone who's listening via YouTube. We've just finished off item 12.5. We're now moving on to the next item on the agenda to be withdrawn for discussion, which is item 10.4.5, entitled Budget Review for the period ended 31 January 2024. There is an officer recommendation before us. It does require an absolute majority. I haven't received any amended motions or alternative motions. Is there anyone who would like to move the officer recommendation? I guess I'll do it. Is there anyone who would like to second? Councillor Coveney, thank you. Councillors, I suppose since it's been moved and seconded, I'll simply ask if anyone opposes the officer recommendation. Councillors, does anyone oppose? Councillor Cridland?
I am not opposed.
All right. Well, in that case, I'll simply use my powers under the standing orders to declare item 10.4.5 carried unanimously, which satisfies the requirement for the absolute majority. And that finishes off item 10 for us. We're moving on to item 11, which is applications for a leave of absence. I have received a leave of absence application from Councillor Blake D'Souza for the period of 28 February 2024 to 29 February 2024 inclusive. And I've also received the leave of absence application from Councillor Jennifer Navard for the period of 23 March 2024 to 25 April 2024 inclusive. Councillors, does anyone else have a leave of absence application that they'd like to submit? No? Councillor Cridland?
No.
All right. In that case, I'll look for a mover, for someone to move a motion that the leave of absence applications received from Councillor Blake D'Souza for the period of 28 February 2024 to 29 February 2024 inclusive, and the application from Councillor Jennifer Navard for the period of 23 March 2024 to 25 April 2024 inclusive be granted. Could I have a mover, please? Councillor Brenda Abrandis, thank you. Seconded by Councillor Mary Choi, thank you. Does anyone oppose this, councillors? No? Councillor Cridland?
I'm not opposed.
All right. In that case, I declare those leaves of applications passed unanimously. Thank you all. That concludes item 11. We now move on to item 12. We've already dealt with item 12.1, which was the notice of motion from Councillor Nick Coveney entitled Hooning on the Peninsula. That means we're moving on to item 12.2, which is a notice of motion from Councillor Mary Choi entitled Restoring the Lake Douglas Bridges in South Perth Lakes Precinct. Councillor Choi, I presume you'd like to move that?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right, we've got that in the agenda in front of us, so I probably don't need you to read that one again. I'll see if there's anyone who wishes to second that motion. Does anyone would like to second Councillor Choi's motion? Councillor Brenda Abrandis, thank you. Councillor Choi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. The motion reads as follows, that Council requests the CEO, 1, as part of the 24-25 annual budget process, to prepare and submit options for cost estimates for funding consideration by Council for the repair and or replacement of the Lake Douglas footbridges. And 2, provide a report to Council on the above for Council consideration by no later than the May 2024 Ordinary Council meeting. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Choi. Councillor Brenda Abrandis, would you like to speak as seconder?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I support this. It is review and it is a report back. I think it's appropriate. It's just something that we need to undertake. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brenda Abrandis. Councillor Navard, I see a hand up there.
I've got some questions.
Fire away.
Thank you. In considering the option for the bridges, is the city considering movement in and around the area, including the relationship between the bike and pedestrian paths between the lakes and the river? How wildlife can move between the lakes and the river? Minimising conflict between bikes, pedestrians and wildlife? Dog behaviour in the area and enhancing the experience for mobility and sensory challenged people.
All right, thank you. Ms Amprimo, can I send that your way?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. I will try and answer all of those, but if I've missed any answers, please come back to me. So to start off with, the relationship between bikes and pedestrians movements in the area, you're making reference to the conflicts around those. The path that the city installed around a year ago, when there were some identified issues with the bridge and we knew that we would have to close them for maintenance, does provide a route that separates or reduces that likelihood of movement across the cycle path. The bridges, as they currently stand, when they were open, also had no cycling across the bridges. So whilst, you know, people can choose not to comply with that, they are signed as no cycling across there, so that minimises the conflict in that particular area. There is a path that crosses the dedicated cycle path that runs along the foreshore to join up with the foreshore footpath. However, there is areas on the main cycle path that indicates to cyclists to slow down for wildlife and due to those conflicts. So there are a number of controls in place at the moment. However, we could consider whether there was some further to add as part of that bridges, looking at the replacement of the bridges. The wildlife movement around that area is probably a little bit more tricky to address because the fact is you've got movements of pedestrians and cyclists, particularly along there, and the wildlife just go wherever they feel like. So that's probably a little bit harder to deal with that one. And if you tried to elevate the cycle path and put sort of crossings for wildlife, that would be quite expensive, and there's no real guarantees that it would work. The dogs in the area, that is being covered by the current review of the dogs on and off leash. So that would be picked up in part of that process. And in terms of mobility or accommodating mobility issues in the area, any replacement bridges would need to comply with the current standards, and there would be also an opportunity to incorporate sort of maybe a standing area on the approach to the bridge for people to stop and enjoy looking over the water there in the lakes. So we could consider those things and include comment on that on the report that has been requested to be brought back to council.
Thank you, Ms Ambrino. Councillors, I'm actually going to speak against this notice of motion, but not because I disagree with the sentiment. I think it's good that we will have budget workshops being presented to us on options, costed options for the future of the Lake Douglas footbridges, and it is appropriate that these options be considered in our annual budget deliberations leading up to the budget decision in June 2024. So I'm not against the sentiment of the notice of motion at all, but I do note that the City Administration has already issued a public notice dated the 14th of November 2023 that has already advised the public that the City is in the process of evaluating the future of the Lake Douglas footbridges, that options will be presented to Council through the 2024-2025 budget setting process, and that a final decision on the future of the Lake Douglas footbridges will coincide or is likely to coincide with the City's annual budget deliberations in June 2024. I agree with the sentiment of the notice of motion, but the administration has already publicly announced that that's exactly what we're going to do. As far as I can tell, and maybe I'm wrong, the notice of motion simply restates the status quo that already exists. So not against the sentiment, not against what's being proposed, but to me at least, this notice of motion is redundant and unnecessary. So we probably shouldn't be passing notices of motion that just maintain the status quo. That's me. Is there anyone else who would like to speak in favour? Councillor Choi.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm just wondering why I haven't been able to, again, to read my reasons to this motion. So we've gone into debate and I haven't even had a chance to read my reasons.
Oh, my apologies, sorry. I didn't realise. Please, yes, read your reasons.
Okay, thank you. My reasons for this notice of motion are as follows. The Lake Douglas bridges, being two ornamental wooden footbridges over Lake Douglas on Sir James Mitchell Park in South Perth, were installed in 1987 and 37 years on are unfortunately, it appears, in a dilapidated state, perceptibly beyond repair, and have been closed on and off for near on a year now due to safety concerns. This has caused a lot of upset in the community, not just with local residents, but also visitors with a disability and wildlife volunteers and observers such as bird watchers who regularly frequent the Lakes Precinct on the South Perth foreshore and use and to some degree depend on the footbridges to undertake their activities. The Lake Douglas footbridges are situated within the Lakes Precinct, identified as Node 7 in the city's endorsed South Perth Foreshore Strategy and Management Plan 2015. It is contemplated within that plan that the city continue providing improved pedestrian legibility and access within the Lakes Precinct, which is to remain and or continue to be developed as an ecologically focused precinct, providing a retreat for bird watching, breeding, ecology and learning, with one of the node actions being to incorporate improved path and bridge connections. In February 2023, the City released a public notice advising the community that it had engaged external engineers to provide a condition assessment report on the Lake Douglas bridges, which report provided recommendations for repair and maintenance. An initial engineering assessment identified that works would require the bridges to be closed for a period of time whilst those repairs and maintenance were carried out. In response to this assessment, the City installed a connecting path between the bridges to allow pedestrians to continue to use the area, that is to walk between the bridges on a solid path, but not over the bridges to reach the other side of the lakes. Nevertheless, following the necessary repairs and maintenance, the bridges were to be reopened to the public. In March 2023, the City released a public update advising the community that minor work was being carried out on the Lake Douglas bridges to tighten handrails and refix timber boards, again reiterating that the bridges would be reopened to the public once this work had been completed. The City also acknowledged that ongoing maintenance work would be required for the life of the bridges to ensure the bridges remain functional and open to the public at all times. In November 2023, the City released another public notice advising the community that the Lake Douglas bridges had now been assessed as being structurally compromised and therefore needed to remain closed for the safety of the public until further notice. Since that time, the bridges have remained closed and the City has been in the process of evaluating the future of the bridges in terms of available options and costings. Given the City in its public notices have acknowledged the community sentiment towards the Lake Douglas bridges and the broad usage of the bridges by a vast array of users, as well as already having committed funds to undertake and carry out some repairs and maintenance work on the bridges in 2023 to try and keep them open, together with the node strategies and actions set out in the South Perth Foreshore Management Plan, it is imperative that these bridges are finally repaired and or replaced to their original or better condition as soon as possible as part of the next upcoming budget cycle and reopened to the public in perpetuity. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Choi, and please accept my apologies. I can only plead that it's been a long day. Councillors, is there anyone who would like to speak either for or against the notice of motion? Councillor Coveney, and perhaps if you can let us know if you're speaking for or against.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I'm speaking against this motion, but for the avoidance of any doubt, I'm very supportive of Council being presented with options. I have a similar sentiment to yourself, Mr Mayor. The administration has already told us that prior to this motion coming before us, we were already going to be presented with motions. So I guess I've got four principal concerns. One, it's not necessary. Two, it might lead the public to come to the conclusion that it's this motion that's brought about change, which was already in motion. And three, it's also got the potential to undermine public confidence in the administration, who of course are already doing these things. And fourth, I'm concerned about passing this motion encourages other motions of a similar nature. We've been here for 3 hours and 15 minutes. I'm concerned about the time that we and admin need to spend dealing with this if it's already on the card. So, as I say, fully supportive of being presented with options, and I appreciate the sentiment by Councillor Choi. I just don't think it's necessary. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coveney. Councillors, is there anyone else who would like to speak for or against the notice of motion? Councillor Cridland?
No, I've got nothing to say.
All right. Councillor Choi, did you wish to say anything by way of winding up?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor. The reason why I have brought this motion, and I have had discussions with some elected members on this that have, contacted me and asked me, is that this allows for the public, not just the council behind closed doors, to view the options and cost estimates and potentially to respond to those ahead of the budget decision in June. If the public are left to June to make a deputation against whatever council may decide behind closed doors during workshop discussions with the officers, and then someone is minded to move the entire budget for this one item, that's what I was trying to achieve with this motion, was to take the heat out of that budget item in June. And this has happened previously where elected members have moved the entire budget to try and accommodate a change in one particular costing. And so this is the only reason I brought this, was to, again, like I said, it's a bit of a contentious issue. There's a lot of interest in it out in the community, and was really just to take the heat out of it at that time of the year when we already know it's going to be probably another heavy agenda. So, but that's fine. If we're going to do it behind closed doors and have that discussion, make that decision, and wait for interested residents to make deputations at budget time with whatever's presented, then that's fine. So, yeah, that's all I'd like to say. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Choi. Councillors, I'm putting item 12.2 to the vote. Please cast your votes. And Councillor Cridland, how would you like to vote?
No.
I think I'm waiting on one more vote here. All right, so the results were for all. In this case, it falls to me to use a casting vote. I am going to vote no. So the final tally is for all, Mayor using casting vote no. For the benefit of those listening via YouTube, the voting results were as follows. So those who voted in favour were Councillor Mary Choi, Councillor Jennifer Navard, Councillor Hayley Prendeville and Councillor Andre Brendera-Brandis. Those who voted against were myself, Mayor Greg Milner, Councillor Glenn Cridland, Councillor Bronwyn Moore and Councillor Nick Coveney. Thank you, councillors. We now move on to the next item, which is item 12.3, notice of motion by Councillor Mary Choi, entitled Enclosed Dog Exercise Area, Olives Reserves Dog Park. Councillor Choi, would you like to read your motion?
Yes, thank you. So the motion reads as follows. The council requests the CEO, 1, as part of the 24-25 annual budget process, provide cost estimates for funding consideration by council for fully enclosing the Olives Reserve Dog Exercise Park and providing additional dog facilities within or around the park. And 2, provide feedback to council during the 24-25 annual budget deliberations, but by no later than end May 2024.
Thank you. Is there anyone who would like to second Councillor Choi's notice of motion? Councillor Waugh. Councillor Choi, the floor is yours.
Thank you. So my reasons for this motion are as follows. 1, the City of South Perth has more dogs registered now than ever before, and ever since I was elected to council in 2019, I've been approached by residents complaining about there being no appropriate enclosed dog exercise area in the district. 2, the City of South Perth has many open dog off-lead exercise areas, but they don't offer any of the features that are found in other well-utilised, fully enclosed dog exercise parks in Perth. Hence, residents must leave the district to use other local government's enclosed dog parks and dog facilities. 3, responsible dog owners know they need to exercise their dog regularly. In my discussions with community members, they explain that the open-style, off-lead dog exercise areas that are only currently available in the district are not suitable for all dogs or their owners, and this is restricting dogs' exercise opportunities. What these residents would like to see for their dogs is fully enclosed, fenced-off areas such as a small dog and a big dog park area, along with training and play equipment designed to get the dogs, the owners and family members involved in exercise and training together. 4, an enclosed dog park allows for better regulation of dog behaviour and increased training opportunities. It ensures dog owners can monitor their dogs and intervene in any behaviours observed, if necessary, especially around other dogs and their owners. City rangers also have an opportunity to inform and educate owners on updated dog local laws and other initiatives. 5. There are examples of enclosed dog exercise parks throughout Perth, including in neighbouring town of Vic Park and City of Perth, with some employing creative design features and including equipment such as tunnels, hoops, ramps, splash pad, rubberised walkways, training areas, agility courses, water fountains and dog wash stations. Benches are also provided within these dog parks to enable owners to sit in the shade and enjoy a break with their dog. It is viewed as a great opportunity for owners and their dogs to get out, enjoy nature, the company of others, whilst getting some exercise at the same time, and within a relatively safe area than an open off-lead dog area. 6. Users of the existing Olive Reserve Dog Exercise Park have told me on numerous occasions that they would prefer for the park to be fully enclosed, with some keeping their dogs on lead in the off-lead part for safety reasons. Sadly, one such dog owner's fear was realised only recently when her small dog, for whatever reason, got the desire to run through the hedges that act as a natural barrier adjacent to the road in front of an oncoming car and was unfortunately killed instantly. Of course, this was distressing for all involved. Similar incidents have been reported on the South Perth foreshore with dogs exercising in off-lead areas crossing shared pathways in front of oncoming cyclists. It demonstrates that no matter how predictable or well-trained a dog may seem to be, if something sets them off, there may be no stopping them and the result can be catastrophic. As the district is becoming more built up and many parks and reserves are increasingly being designated for multi-purpose shared use activities, increased safe exercise opportunities for dogs are also needed. And 7, the location proposed has already had preliminary investigations undertaken by the City Administration, is already designated and utilised as a dog exercise park, already has some exercise and agility course equipment installed, and is already partially enclosed. Hence, the location is viewed as a suitable location and also economically, enhancing the infrastructure of the existing facility represents a significantly more cost-effective solution than constructing an entirely new facility from scratch somewhere else. Of course, if this enclosed dog park is successful, the City may wish to investigate other enclosed dog park opportunities in the future too. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Choi. Councillor Waugh, you're the seconder. Is there anything you'd like to add?
Sure, thank you. Look, this park is a local one of mine and I regularly visit there with my dog. The recent tragic incident of the dog losing its life after running onto the road does serve as a stark reminder of the importance of providing a safe space for our pets to play and exercise. I also acknowledge that not every dog owner has the ability to run after their pets, and ensuring that there is provision of enclosed spaces of at least a few locations within the city will provide those persons with a safe space to take their dog and allow them to play and exercise off leash without fear of them running onto the road and being run over, as what happened here. The reserve already being, as you said, an established dog park and being large enough to be fenced off without feeling enclosed is actually quite appropriate for a location for an enclosed dog area. And I do think that having the area fenced will not only ensure the safety of dogs, but also for those drivers passing by. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Waugh. Councillors, I'm going to speak against this motion as well. And again, I completely agree with the sentiment being expressed. We should have safe spaces for dog exercise areas in the city. My family has a dog. We love him very much. But I do note that Council has had a workshop with the city staff on this issue on the 4th of December last year. And the topic of an enclosed dog park was raised during that workshop. The City Administration, according to this report, has already identified options for an enclosed dog exercise area at Olives Reserve, and the City Administration is already working on costings for these options to be provided to us at a workshop that's already scheduled for next Monday, Monday fortnight, Monday the 11th of March 2024. So I'm absolutely supportive of the sentiments that have been expressed by Councillor Choi and by Councillor Waugh. That's great. But again, this notice of motion seems to be just restating the status quo. I don't see that it's adding anything to the governance of the city. It's probably redundant and unnecessary. So for that reason, I'm going to be voting against this, if only to ensure that the motions that we bring to council are motions that somehow change the status quo. That's me. Is there anyone else who would like to speak either for or against the notice of motion? Councillor Coveney.
Thank you, Mr Mayor. I share your sentiments on this issue for the same reasons as the last issue about the bridges. Very supportive of being presented with options. I've got a toy cavoodle Lulu. She's nuts, so I would love there to be a fenced area so I don't lose hair. But as I say, this is in motion already, so I'm concerned it's not necessary and we're therefore spending time talking about it. And I'm concerned about the public coming to the conclusion that the administration hasn't been active on this issue themselves when they have. So I want to ensure that there is public confidence in our admin. I'm pretty keen as a separate issue on activation of our precincts, and part of that for me is better lighting at night time. I understand that's going to be part of budget deliberations for councillors leading up to the budget, but I didn't bring a motion about it. I just emailed admin and said, can this be part of deliberations? And I think that saved us probably 15, 20 minutes of chatting that I thought could otherwise have been saved. And yeah, so that's the reason why. So love the idea, but I think it's unnecessary in this format. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Coveney. Councillors, is there anyone who would like to speak for or against the notice of motion? Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Yeah, thank you, Mr Mayor. I am speaking for this motion, and I feel it's actually quite appropriate that if we've got enough sentiment and concern in the community, that we should actually be bringing these to the table. This motion is about transparency, it's about concern that the public have actually raised. So I think it's actually quite important that we actually put it on the table, make sure it gets the consideration it needs, and it actually gets the publicity that it also needs. There is concern with regard to dogs, and we've had quite a few complaints, and I've been personally contacted as well with regard to some of the inappropriate behaviour, and also with regard to some of the owners and the way they've been managing their dogs. So I think it is really quite an important issue. I'm aware that we have got additional ongoing work and workshops to consider across the city with regard to dog facilities, but we've got a specific issue here. And it has been raised before, so I think we should actually pursue it. And yes, it can form part of the overall project that we're doing, but specifically, I think we need to draw attention to this one. I don't think it's a concern about lack of confidence in the administration. I think the administration do a fine job. It's just the fact that we actually want this item to be specifically on the agenda. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Brenda Abrandis. Councillors, is there anyone else who would like to speak either for or against the notice of motion? Councillor Cridland.
I'll speak very briefly. I speak against it simply because I think it's important that we just bring new material to council and we don't rehash stuff that's already on the agenda and repackage it into, it's a bit like re-gifting at Christmas time. We shouldn't rehash old stuff and put it into a motion as if it's something new, because it misleads the community into thinking that we haven't done something about it, like we haven't had workshops and dealt with the matter. Matters can be important, but the community can also be misled that we haven't been thinking about these matters. So for that reason, and that reason alone, I'm not going to support this motion.
Thank you, Councillor Cridland. Councillors, is there anyone else who wishes to speak either for or against who hasn't already spoken? No. Councillor Choi, did you wish to say anything by way of winding up?
Yes, I would, thank you, Mr Mayor. Firstly, I object to the assertion that my motion may be misleading the community or underestimating the abilities of the administration. It absolutely does not do that. This is something new. This was not covered at the workshop. It is not reinstating the status quo. This motion is specifically for this dog park at Olives Reserve in Como. So that's why I have brought it. It's been something that's been on the agenda for a long time in the background. I've now decided on the back of this tragedy to now bring it. So the community want it. That's what I'm doing. I'm representing the community and I've brought it. But yep, I'll leave it in the hands of the council. Thank you.
Thank you, Councillor Choi. Councillors, I'm now putting the item to the vote. We're voting on item 12.3. Please cast your votes. And Councillor Cridland, how would you like to vote?
I'm a no.
All right. And the motion has passed 5 votes to 3. For the benefit of those who are listening via YouTube, the votes were as follows. I'm just waiting for the screen to come up. Okay, so those in favour were Councillor Mary Choi, Councillor Jennifer Navard, Councillor Hayley Prendeville, Councillor Bronwyn Moore and Councillor Andre Brendera-Brandis. Those against were myself, Mayor Greg Milner, Councillor Glenn Cridland and Councillor Nick Coveney. Thank you, councillors. We now move on to item 12.4, which is a notice of motion from Councillor Bronwyn Moore entitled Advertising of Short-Term Accommodation Local Planning Policy. Councillor Waugh, would you like to read your notice of motion? And then we'll see about a seconder.
Thank you.
So I move that Council, pursuant to Schedule 2, Part 2, Clause 4.1 of the Planning and Development Local Planning Schemes Regulations 2015, advertises a draft local planning policy short stay accommodation in the terms annexed, save for clauses 2.2.1, for which the CEO has discretion to include the relevant car parking requirements prior to the publication of the policy, and 2, that a report on the above be presented by no later than the May 2024 Ordinary Council meeting.
Thank you, Councillor Waugh. Is there someone who would like to second that? Councillor Prendeville. Just before I invite you to speak, Councillor Waugh, I am aware that I think Councillor Cridland might be wishing to move a deferral on this one. Councillor Cridland, is that correct?
It is, Mr Mayor. I was going to move that the item be deferred to the next meeting I'm exposing all of my human frailties. For some of you, you may not think I'm human, but I really have not got on top of this particular motion. It's a significant one, and I'd just like to consider it a little bit better before I vote on it. Now, it may well be that the other councillors there are better prepared, and I know I'm on a leave of absence, so maybe people think I shouldn't even be here, but I'm a bit of a quandary knowing how to vote on it for this meeting. It didn't seem to me that it was a terribly urgent item that wouldn't be able to be dealt with at the next meeting, so I was going to ask the meeting or the council rather, whether they would give me the indulgence of having the item dealt with at the next council meeting so I could properly read up on the issue.
All right. Thank you, Councillor Cridland. Councillor Waugh, I think you're indicating that you're happy with that deferral request as well?
Yes, thank you, Mr Mayor.
All right. Governance, is it just the case that Councillor Cridland would move it and Councillor Waugh would second the deferral motion? Someone else has got to second it. Well, I guess I'll do. Oh, Councillor Coveney's offered to second it. Councillors, please cast your votes on a motion that this item be deferred until the next council meeting. And Councillor Cridland, I presume you're voting in favour?
Yes, I'm not going to do a Councillor Huston. I'm going to vote yes to my motion.
All right. Well, that was passed unanimously, so thank you, councillors. That brings us to item 13, which is questions from members. Item 13.1 is responses to previous questions from members taken on notice, and responses to questions from members taken on notice at the December 2023 Ordinary Council meeting can be found in the appendix of this agenda. Item 13.2 is questions from members. Do we have any questions from members this evening? Councillor Choi.
Yes, thanks, Mr Mayor. My first question is whether, given I seconded the Hooning motion before, but I didn't get to speak to it as a seconder.
No, Councillor Choi, the standing orders provide that after a motion has been moved and seconded, if no one opposes that notice of motion, then I have the ability to declare it carried. And given that it's, 22 minutes to 10 at the moment, that was probably the right decision.
Thank you, Mr Mayor, but I note that I think everyone else who seconded got to speak to their motions.
Councillor Choi, again, that's a discretionary power that I have under the standing orders, and most of the motions that have been debated tonight actually had someone opposing them. No one opposed item 12.1. Any further questions?
Yes, so my other question then relates to the electors meeting minutes. So I'm not sure if the administration are aware, but there's been, I think the 2023 electors minutes are currently posted up against the 2024 electors meeting. And I have had residents just querying when the 2024 actual minutes are going to be posted in place of the 2023 ones.
Should I send that to Ms. Wright?
I'm actually pretty sure we've got a public notice saying when the minutes for the electors meeting, which will be at the March meeting. There's a public notice on the website saying just that.
Upon the available on the website?
A public notice on the website.
Sorry, the minutes of
No, a public notice stating that because of the number of motions, that the minutes for the electors meeting will be dealt with at the March meeting.
Oh, okay. So it'll be up on the website, the minutes. There's normally a transcript on the currently
After
the
the March
2023
OCM.
ones up there in the 2024 spot. That's all.
Councillor Choi, I think Mr. Bradford is trying to answer your question.
So the minutes of the electors meeting need to be considered by council. Given the date that the electors meeting was held, I think the 8th of February, and the length of the meeting, the number of motions that were passed, we put up a notice on the website saying that rather than the February OCM would be the meeting that the electors meeting minutes are dealt with, they will be dealt with at the March OCM. After council has dealt with them at the March OCM, then they will be published.
Thank you, Mr. Bradford. Another question, Councillor Choi?
Yeah, thank you through the chair to CEO Bradford. No, I was just also letting administration know that the 2023 electors meeting minutes are up in the 2024 electors meeting spot. That's what I was trying to say, that's all. Thank you.
Thank you. Councillors, any other questions for the administration this evening? Councillor Navard.
This is quite a quick one. The Angelo Street local patrons have admired the treatment that half the shopping strip has received at the western end, particularly in relation to the how the trees have been treated. And I was just wondering about the other end of the street, and will the other end of the strip along the Wesley playing fields receive a similar treatment once the parklet installation has gone ahead?
Ms. Ampremo, should I send that your way?
Yeah, thank you, Mr. Mayor. It is on the Forward Capital Works programme and will be subject to budget approval.
Thank you, Ms. Ampremo. Mr. Bradford, you had a follow-up point to make?
Councillor Choi, the minutes of the 2023 electors meeting are on the website under the 2024 meeting. That was done deliberately so that members of the public could access the minutes prior to attending the electors meeting. So it's not a mistake.
Thank you, Mr. Bradford. Councillors, any further questions for the administration this evening? Councillor Brenda Abrandis.
Yeah, thanks, Mr. Mayor. Just with regard to Coode Street, I've noticed some quite significant trees that have actually died or are dying. I just want to know if any reports have been made. So, in particular, at 99 Coode Street, it's a really massive tree. It looks like it's probably like 30, 40 years old. That's died. 27 Coode Street as well. Again, it's a Queensland box gum, and again, the tree is probably 30 years old. Now, interestingly enough, there's a development that's actually happened on that site, so I'm just wondering, is it due to water or is it due to the development? Do we have any indication on that one at all?
Ms. Ampremo?
Yeah, through you, Mr. Mayor. I don't have confirmation of the exact locations, but we currently have a number of Queensland box trees that are suffering significantly in the current hot conditions. We have taken action to try and recover the health of those trees. However, there is a risk that a number of them won't survive. But there are a number across the city that are currently struggling to be maintained.
Yeah, but the one at 27 Coode Street, do we know if that's due to the development activity? Because there's been a substantial development at that property?
Yeah, I'd need to check on that specific location, but I know that there are a number across the city that are suffering generally from the prolonged heat. I believe that it's around, I think it was 9 years ago that we last had a weather event of this significance during the summer.
Excellent. Thank you. Thank you, Ms. Amprimo. Just one more question. You probably don't have the information on you now, but 146 Coode Street as well, 2 Agonis flexuosa trees have also, one's died and the other one's dying. Again, quite significant trees, but probably the same problems. If someone could have a look into that for me. Thank you.
Ms. Amprimo?
Yeah, we'll check those specific locations.
Thank you. Any further questions for the administration, councillors? Councillor Cridland?
I just had one, and that was to the CEO. And that was, have we changed the standing orders so we now do questions from members on items in the council meeting rather than at the briefing? Because I heard a lot of questions tonight.
Mr. Bradford?
The standing orders haven't changed and there is an allowance for questions. I think the standing orders requires them to be succinct and brief.
I can confirm that. Yes, that's correct. Any further questions, Councillor Cridland?
That's it from me.
All right. In that case, that brings us to item 14, which is new business of an urgent nature, introduced by decision of the meeting. That is nil. Item 15 is ordinarily when we'd go behind closed doors if there was any reason to do so, but there is not. Which brings us to item 16, which is closure. So before I close tonight's meeting, I'd like to thank everyone for their attendance and participation. Thank you all. I declare the meeting closed at 9:45 p.m. Thank you all and good night.